The crystal chandeliers of Luminaire cast fractured light across white tablecloths like broken promises. Clara Whitmore moved through the dining room like a ghost, deliberately forgettable, professionally invisible. That was the point. That had always been the point. She balanced 3 plates along her left arm with practiced ease, her movements economical and precise. The Friday night crowd buzzed with the particular energy of Chicago's elite. Venture capitalists celebrating deals, politicians entertaining donors, old money reminding new money who really ran this city. Clara served them all with downcast eyes and a pleasant smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Excuse me, miss." The voice came from table 12, the corner booth that had been reserved under a simple initial. Clara turned, her server's mask firmly in place. "Yes, ma'am. How can I help you?" The elderly woman sitting across from a broad-shouldered man in an impeccable charcoal suit gestured apologetically. She was perhaps 70, with silver hair swept into an elegant chignon and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. Her hands moved in a fluid, graceful pattern. Sign language. Clara's breath caught. For just a fraction of a second, her carefully constructed persona wavered. She understood every word. "I'm sorry to trouble you, but could you tell me what the soup of the day is?" The menu doesn't specify. The safe choice would be to smile apologetically, shake her head, fetch a manager. That's what Clara Whitmore would do. That's what any server facing a language barrier would do. But the woman's expression was so hopeful, so accustomed to being overlooked in a hearing world, that something in Clara's chest cracked open. Her hands moved before her mind could stop them. The soup today is roasted butternut squash with sage cream and toasted pepitas. It's quite good. The chef makes it fresh every morning. The woman's face lit up like sunrise. "Oh, wonderful. You sign. How lovely. I'll have that, please." "Of course. Would you like anything to drink with your meal?" "Just water with lemon, dear. Thank you so much." Clara smiled, a real smile this time, and nodded. She was already turning away when she felt it, the weight of absolute attention. The kind of focus that made the air feel heavy, that made prey animals freeze in the wilderness. She looked up. The man across from the elderly woman was staring at her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. He was perhaps 40, with dark hair touched with silver at the temples, and a face that might have been handsome if it weren't so carefully controlled. His eyes were the color of slate before a storm, gray and utterly unreadable. But they saw her, really saw her, and in that moment, Clara knew she had made a catastrophic mistake. "That was very kind of you," he said. His voice was smooth, cultured, with just a hint of something dangerous underneath. Not many people know ASL. I learned it in college," Clara said quickly, defaulting to her cover story. "Community service requirement." One dark eyebrow rose fractionally. "Community service at Northwestern?" Clara's stomach dropped. She'd never mentioned Northwestern. That detail wasn't on her employment application, wasn't part of her carefully rehearsed backstory for casual conversation. "I should put in your order," she said, taking a step back. "Please excuse me." She fled to the kitchen before he could respond, her heart hammering against her ribs. Stupid, stupid, stupid. In 3 years of hiding, she'd never slipped. Not once. She'd been so careful, changing her hair from honey blonde to dark brown, wearing colored contacts to hide her distinctive amber eyes, adopting a flatter Midwestern accent to mask the East Coast boarding school polish in her voice. She'd buried Alessandra Vitale so deep that sometimes she almost believed Clara Whitmore was real. And she'd just shattered that illusion because an old woman reminded her of her grandmother. "Order up, Clara." Danny, the line cook, slid 2 plates across the pass. "Table 7. She mechanized her breathing, forced her hand steady, and grabbed the plates. This was fine. She was fine. So what if one customer paid attention? Luminaire served 300 people a night. By tomorrow, he wouldn't even remember her face. But when she emerged from the kitchen, his eyes found her immediately across the crowded restaurant. He watched her serve table 7, watched her refill water glasses at table 3, watched her laugh politely at an off-color joke from the regular at table 9 who always overtipped and underdressed, watched her like she was a puzzle he intended to solve. Clara's coworker, Misha, appeared at her elbow during a rare quiet moment at the service station. "Girl, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine, just tired." Misha, a theater major with purple streaks in her black hair and a gift for reading people, wasn't convinced. This wouldn't have anything to do with the man at table 12 who's been staring at you for the last 45 minutes like you're the only person in this restaurant? He's not. Oh, he absolutely is. And honey, I recognize that face. Victor Moretti. Came in once before, about 6 months ago. Owns half the south side, and not the legal half, if you know what I mean. Misha's voice dropped to a whisper. Word is he's connected. Like, connected. The kind of man you smile at, serve efficiently, and forget immediately. But forgetting was a luxury Clara no longer had. The rest of the dinner service passed in a blur of forced normalcy. She brought the butternut squash soup, which the elderly woman enjoyed immensely, signing her compliments to the chef. She served their entrees, beef Wellington for him, seared halibut for her. She refilled wine glasses and cleared plates and smiled until her face ached. And through it all, Victor Moretti watched. When they finally requested the check, Clara's hand trembled slightly as she processed the payment. He'd left a credit card, which she ran through the system with mechanical efficiency. Victor Moretti. The name meant nothing to Clara Whitmore, who'd only lived in Chicago for 3 years. But Alessandro Vitale? She knew exactly who he was. The Morettis controlled the South Side with an iron fist wrapped in legitimate business ventures. They'd been rivals to her family for 2 generations. Not quite enemies, but never friends. A delicate balance of power that her father, Antonio Vitale, had maintained through careful negotiation and occasional violence. And she'd just signed a conversation in front of Victor Moretti using skills she'd learned from her grandmother Rosa, who'd lost her hearing to childhood illness and who'd taught all the Vitale children to sign before they could properly speak. She brought the receipt to his table with a hand that no longer shook. Fear was useless now. If he'd recognized her, running would only confirm his suspicions. "Thank you for dining with us this evening," she said in her perfected Midwestern neutrality. "I hope everything was to your satisfaction." "Everything was excellent." The elderly woman signed as she spoke, her voice carrying the particular quality of someone who'd lost hearing later in life. "You made my evening, dear. It's not often I can communicate so easily in restaurants." "I'm so glad," Clara signed back, unable to help herself. "You're very welcome." "My mother enjoyed her meal immensely," Victor said, his eyes never leaving Clara's face. "Thanks to your kindness." His mother. Of course. The family resemblance was there in the strong jawline, the aristocratic nose. "I'm happy to help," Clara said. "Have a wonderful evening." She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Clara." She froze. Slowly, she looked back. "That's your name, isn't it? Clara Whitmore?" He said it like he was testing the weight of it, seeing if it rang true or false. "Yes, sir." "You're a student at Northwestern?" "Was. I graduated last spring." Another lie, smooth as silk. The real Clara Whitmore had graduated. The girl wearing her identity had never set foot in a classroom there. "What did you study?" This was dangerous ground. Every answer was a potential trap. "Psychology," she said, picking the major listed on the real Clara's transcripts, with a minor in linguistics. "Linguistics." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "That explains the sign language." "I've always been interested in communication," Clara said carefully, "how we connect with each other despite barriers." "Barriers," he repeated. "Yes, we all have those, don't we? Things we hide, things we protect." The air between them felt electrically charged, dangerous. His mother was watching their exchange with bright, curious eyes, oblivious to the undercurrent of threat. "If you'll excuse me," Clara said, "I have other tables." This time, he let her go. But when she glanced back 10 minutes later as they were leaving, he was still watching. And as he held the door for his mother, he turned back one last time, meeting Clara's eyes across the crowded restaurant. He knew something was wrong. Maybe not what, not yet. But he knew. And men like Victor Moretti didn't let go of puzzles until they'd solved them. Clara's apartment was a study in deliberate mediocrity. Studio efficiency in a building that had seen better decades, furnished with thrift store finds and whatever the previous tenant had left behind. No photographs on the walls, no personal touches that couldn't be abandoned in 15 minutes if necessary. She'd learned early that survival meant traveling light, It was past midnight when she finally climbed the 3 flights of stairs, her feet aching in the sensible flats all Luminaire servers wore. The hallway smelled like someone's late-night cooking, garlic, and something spicy that made her stomach growl despite the stress coiling in her gut. Inside, she locked 3 separate locks and pulled the cheap curtain across the single window that looked out onto the fire escape. Only then did she let herself breathe. She made chamomile tea she didn't want and sat on the futon that served as her couch, trying to think. Victor Moretti had seen her, really seen her. And in a world where invisibility was survival, being seen was death. The question was, had he recognized her? 3 years ago, when she'd fled New York, she'd been 21 and desperate. Her father had arranged a marriage, not asked arranged, to a man twice her age who ran weapons through Port Newark, a strategic alliance, Antonio had called it, a prison sentence Alessandra had known. So she'd done the unthinkable. She'd run. Not far at first, just to her grandmother's house in Connecticut, thinking Rosa would help her. But her father's reach was long, and within a week, men had come looking. Rosa had hidden her in the attic, lied to their faces, and then driven her to the bus station at 3 a.m. with a backpack full of cash and a burner phone. "You were always too smart for this life, cara mia," Rosa had said, tears streaming down her weathered face as she signed. "Go, live, be free. I'll tell them you're dead if I have to." Clara had chosen Chicago because it was big enough to disappear in, but far enough from the East Coast power structures that her father's people wouldn't look twice. She'd found an identity broker through a friend of someone Rosa knew, a woman who specialized in helping people vanish. The real Clara Whitmore had died in a car accident 2 years earlier, no family, no complications. For $5,000, her documents had become Alessandra's escape hatch. For 3 years, it had worked. But tonight, in the space of one kind gesture, she might have destroyed everything. Her phone buzzed, the smartphone she was allowed to keep, tied to Clara Whitmore's identity. Probably Misha, texting about some drama with the closing staff. Clara reached for it, then froze. Unknown number. Her heart stopped. Nobody had this number except her employer, her landlord, and a handful of coworkers. She'd been so careful. The text was short. "You helped my mother tonight. That kindness won't be forgotten." VM Clara stared at the screen until her vision blurred. It could be innocent, a simple thank you. Gratitude from a man whose elderly mother had enjoyed a rare moment of easy communication. Or it could be a warning. A message that said, "I see you. I know where you work. I can find you whenever I want." She should run. Pack the go bag she kept in the closet, grab the emergency cash taped under the bathroom sink, and disappear before dawn. Start over somewhere else. Albuquerque, Portland. Somewhere. But she was so tired of running. Clara set down the phone without responding and walked to the small bathroom mirror. She stared at her reflection, dark brown hair that felt wrong every time she looked at it, hazel contacts that obscured the amber eyes she'd inherited from her mother, skin paler than it should be from 3 years of avoiding anywhere her father's people might congregate. She looked nothing like Alessandra Vitale, but Victor Moretti had looked at her like he could see straight through the disguise. Sleep was impossible. She lay on the futon as the city's sounds filtered through her window. Sirens, someone's bass-heavy music, the rattle of the L train 6 blocks away. Chicago's lullaby. Dawn came gray and cold, November settling into the city's bones. Clara showered, made coffee, and checked the news like she did every morning, scanning for any mention of her father's organization. Antonio Vitale was careful, legitimate on the surface, but occasionally something slipped through. An arrest of a low-level associate, a business deal that raised eyebrows. Nothing today. Just the usual chaos of the world. She dressed for her Saturday morning shift at Luminaire, the brunch crowd, usually easier than dinner, but no less exhausting. She was twisting her hair into its usual low bun when her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Different from last night. Alessandra Vitale. "We know where you are. Come home or we'll come get you." The phone slipped from her nerveless fingers, clattering against the cheap linoleum. They'd found her. After 3 years, her father's people had finally tracked her down. Clara's mind raced. How? She'd been so careful. Every transaction in cash. No social media. No contact with anyone from her old life except one carefully encrypted email to Rosa every few months, sent from different internet cafes, never the same one twice. Unless someone had recognized her last night. Not Victor Moretti. His text had been polite, almost friendly. But Luminaire catered to the wealthy and powerful. What if someone else had been there? Someone with connections to New York. Someone who'd looked twice at the waitress with the distinctive mannerisms that no amount of dye could completely hide. She had maybe hours before they came. Maybe less. Clara grabbed her go-bag from the closet, hands shaking now. Cash, documents, a change of clothes, a burner phone still in its package. Everything she needed to disappear. But where could she go that they wouldn't find her? Her father had resources across the country. If they'd found her in Chicago, they could find her anywhere. A third text arrived. Same number as the threat. You have until tomorrow midnight. After that, it gets messy. 24 hours. Clara sank onto the futon, go-bag clutched in her lap. She could run and spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder. Or she could… what? Go back? Let her father marry her off to a monster? Become a pawn in his endless game of power and territory? Or she could fight. The thought was laughable. She was one person with no resources, no allies, no weapons except a fake identity that had just been burned. What could she possibly do against Antonio Vitale's organization? But as she sat there, the morning light creeping across her depressing little apartment, another option began to form. Desperate, probably suicidal, but possible. If her father's people had found her, they'd done it somehow, which meant someone had talked, or someone had seen something, or someone had connected dots that shouldn't have been connectable. And if there was one thing Alessandra Vitale had learned growing up in her father's world, it was that information was currency, and Chicago's South Side had its own king of information, Victor Moretti. The idea was insane. The Morettis and the Vitales weren't enemies, but they weren't friends. Going to Victor would be exposing herself completely, trusting a man she didn't know with secrets that could get her killed. But he'd noticed her, really noticed her. And his mother had been kind. And something in the way he'd looked at her hadn't been threatening. It had been curious. Maybe curious was enough. Clara grabbed her phone and pulled up the text from last night. You helped my mother tonight. That kindness won't be forgotten. She stared at it for a long moment, weighing her options. Run and hide forever, go back and lose herself, or take a chance on a man who might help or might turn her over to her father for whatever price Antonio was offering. Her thumbs moved before she could second-guess herself. I need to meet, today. It's urgent. She hit send and immediately wanted to throw the phone across the room. What was she thinking? Victor Moretti wasn't a friend. He was a crime boss. Just because he'd been polite to a waitress didn't mean… The phone buzzed. Noon. Millennium Park, Cloudgate. Come alone. Clara's laugh was slightly hysterical. Come alone. As if she had anyone to bring. She had 4 hours to decide if she was brave or just stupid. Millennium Park was crowded for a November Saturday. Tourists and locals alike bundled against the cold to take selfies with the massive reflective sculpture everyone called the Bean. Clara stood at the edge of the plaza, hands shoved deep in her coat pockets, watching her breath cloud in the frigid air. She'd dressed in layers, jeans, boots, a heavy sweater under her thrift store peacoat. The go-bag was hidden in a locker at Union Station, along with most of her cash. If this went wrong, she wanted to be able to run. Victor Moretti arrived at exactly noon. He wore a long black wool coat that probably cost more than 3 months of Clara's rent, with a dark gray scarf knotted at his throat. 2 men flanked him, obvious security, their alertness marking them as professionals. But when Victor raised a hand, they fell back, giving him space. He approached alone as promised. Miss Whitmore, he said, stopping a careful distance away. Close enough to talk, far enough to respect her space. Or should I call you something else? Clara's stomach dropped. So he did know. How long have you known? She asked. Known what exactly? Don't. Her voice came out sharper than intended. Please don't play games. I don't have time. Something shifted in his expression. Reassessment, maybe respect. I suspected last night. You move like someone who's had training in situational awareness. You watch exits. You position yourself with your back to walls. And your sign language wasn't learned in a college course. It's too fluent, too natural. the way native speakers communicate. That's not proof of anything. No, he agreed. But your eyes are wrong. Claire's hand instinctively rose toward her face before she caught herself. The color is fine, Victor continued, his voice almost gentle. But the way you see, that's harder to hide. You catalog threats in that restaurant like someone who'd been taught to, probably from childhood. And when you looked at me, he paused. You knew who I was, not Victor Moretti, the businessman who makes reservations at expensive restaurants. You knew. There was no point in denying it. Yes. So who are you, really? This was it. The moment where she either trusted a stranger with her life or walked away and kept running. Clara looked at him, really looked. His face was hard, yes, but there were lines around his eyes that spoke of laughter. His hands, when he'd held his mother's arm last night, had been gentle. And something in the way he stood there, patient despite the cold, waiting for her answer instead of demanding it, made her decision. My name is Alessandra Vitale, she said quietly. I'm Antonio Vitale's daughter, and I need your help. To his credit, Victor's expression barely changed. A slight widening of the eyes, perhaps. A subtle tension in his shoulders, but his voice remained steady. Antonio Vitale's daughter disappeared 3 years ago. Officially died in a boating accident off the Connecticut coast. Officially, Clara, Alessandra, confirmed. In reality, I ran. He wanted to marry me off to Joseph Castellano to secure a weapons pipeline. I refused. So I became someone else. And now? Now they've found me. She pulled out her phone and showed him the threatening text. I have until tomorrow midnight to come home. After that, they'll come get me. Victor read the message, his jaw tightening. How did they find you? I don't know. I've been careful. So careful, but last night... She trailed off, the pieces suddenly clicking together. Last night I was visible. I signed with your mother in front of a room full of people. What if someone recognized... Not my mother, Victor interrupted. The signing itself. How many people in Chicago's elite circles know ASL fluently? It's distinctive. If someone from your father's organization was there, or heard about it, they'd know it was me. Alessandra felt sick. Rosa taught all of us to sign. It was our secret language, only family knew. And you used it without thinking because my mother reminded you of her. It wasn't a question, but Alessandra nodded anyway. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to... Don't apologize for being kind. Victor's voice was firm. My mother has struggled with isolation since losing her hearing. You gave her a moment of connection. That's worth something. Even if it got me caught? Especially then. He studied her face, and Alessandra had the strange sensation of being truly seen for the first time in years. Why come to me? We're not allies. Your father and I have a complicated relationship. Complicated, Alessandra repeated. Not enemies. Not friends, either. No, but you're powerful. You have resources. And, she hesitated, then pushed forward. And you noticed me when everyone else looked through me. You saw something wrong. That means you pay attention. I need someone who pays attention. A ghost of a smile touched Victor's lips. You're asking me to protect you from your own family. That could start a war. I'm asking you to help me disappear. Really disappear this time. Somewhere they'll never find me. Even as she said it, Alessandra knew how desperate it sounded, how impossible. Victor was quiet for a long moment, watching the tourists mill around the bean, oblivious to the dangerous conversation happening in their midst. When he spoke, his words were careful. I could do that. I have contacts, resources, but they'd always be looking. Antonio Vitale doesn't strike me as a man who lets go easily. He doesn't. So running is a temporary solution. Eventually, they'd find you again. Alessandra knew he was right, but hearing it spoken aloud made her chest constrict. What's the alternative? I won't go back. I won't be married off like property. Then don't run. Victor met her eyes. Expose the conspiracy. What conspiracy? The one that's forcing Antonio's hand. Victor took a step closer, his voice dropping. 3 years ago, when you disappeared, there were rumors. Whispers that Antonio was being pressured to consolidate power, to form alliances he didn't want. The Castellano marriage was strategic, yes, but also desperate. I don't understand. Your father is being undermined from within his own organization. Someone close to him is planning a takeover. The marriage alliance was supposed to protect him, bring Castellano's resources into play. When you ran, it weakened him. Alessandra's mind raced. How do you know this? Because I've been watching, waiting. The balance of power in this city is delicate, and when your family destabilizes, it affects everyone. Victor's expression was serious. If you go back, you could expose whoever's betraying your father. Stop the conspiracy before it turns violent. Or I could get killed. Yes, he admitted, that's also possible. But staying hidden means living half a life, always afraid. At least this way, you'd be fighting back. The wind picked up, cutting through Alessandra's coat. Tourists laughed as they jockeyed for photos. Somewhere, a street musician played jazz on a saxophone. Normal life, happening all around her while her world teetered on a knife's edge. Why would you help me with this? She asked. What's in it for you? Victor's smile was slight but genuine. Preventing a war that would destabilize the entire region? That's worth quite a bit. But also, he paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. You showed my mother kindness when you could have simply walked away. You saw her as a person, not an obstacle. That tells me something about who you are. And I'd rather have someone like you shaping the future of this city than whoever's trying to seize power through violence. It was perhaps the most honest thing anyone had said to Alessandra in 3 years. If I agree to this, she said slowly, I'll need protection, information, a way to get close enough to my family to investigate without being locked away or killed. All of that can be arranged. And when it's over, if we succeed, then you'll be free, truly free. No more running, no more hiding. Victor extended his hand. Do we have an agreement? Alessandra looked at his outstretched hand, a lifeline or a trap. She couldn't be sure. But staying Clara Whitmore meant slow death of the soul. Running meant looking over her shoulder forever. And going back alone meant walking into a cage. This was a third option. Dangerous, possibly suicidal, but her own choice. She took his hand. His grip was firm, warm despite the cold. We have an agreement, she said. But I have one condition. Name it. When this is over, if I survive, I want to keep my freedom. No obligations to you or your organization. No debts that turn into leashes. Victor's expression softened slightly. You have my word. You help me prevent a war and you walk away free. No strings. It was probably a lie. Men in his position didn't give something for nothing, but it was the best offer she was going to get. Then where do we start? Alessandra asked. We start, Victor said, releasing her hand, by figuring out who sent you that text. Because Antonio might want you home, but that threat? That's not his style. He'd send someone to collect you quietly, not announce his intentions and give you time to run. This feels like someone else's play. Alessandra pulled out her phone and read the message again with fresh eyes. Come home, or we'll come get you. Victor was right. Her father was many things, but theatrical wasn't one of them. This felt like someone trying to leverage her, force a crisis. Someone who wants me to panic, she said slowly. Someone who benefits from chaos in my father's organization. Exactly, which means our first step isn't confronting your father. It's finding out who's pulling strings behind the scenes. Victor gestured toward his waiting security. I have resources we can use, safe houses, information networks, but we need to move quickly. If they've given you until tomorrow midnight, they're planning something for that deadline. What do you think they'll do? Victor's expression darkened. Nothing good. Either they'll come for you themselves, triggering a response from your father that destabilizes his organization, or they'll use your refusal to return as proof that Antonio can't control his own family. Either way, someone's trying to start a war. The pieces were falling into place, a picture emerging that made Alessandra's blood run cold. She'd thought running away was about her freedom. But what if her disappearance had been part of someone else's larger plan? What if they'd wanted her gone, out of the way, a weakness they could exploit later? We need to warn my father, she said. We need proof first. Walk in with accusations and no evidence, and you'll be dismissed, or worse. But walk in with names, documentation, proof of betrayal? That's power. Victor checked his watch. We have 36 hours. I suggest we use them wisely. Alessandra looked at the bean one last time. Tourists captured in its warped reflection, distorted and multiple, everyone seeing a different version of the same thing. How fitting. Okay, she said. I'm in. What's the plan? Victor's smile was sharp as a blade. The plan is we make you disappear one more time, but this time we control the narrative, and we use that control to smoke out whoever's trying to destroy your family. And if it doesn't work, then we improvise. Together. The word together shouldn't have been comforting. Victor Moretti was still a stranger, still dangerous in ways Alessandra was only beginning to understand. But as they walked away from Millennium Park, his security falling into formation around them, she realized something had shifted. For 3 years, she'd been alone, isolated. Every decision made in silence, every risk calculated in the dark. Now, for better or worse, she had an ally. And in the world she'd been born into, that might be the most dangerous thing of all. Victor's car was a study in understated luxury, black leather, tinted windows, and enough soundproofing that the chaos of Chicago's streets disappeared the moment the door closed. Alessandra sat in the back seat, acutely aware of the security detail in the front, and the SUV following at a careful distance behind them. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere they won't think to look." Victor scrolled through his phone, his expression focused. "I have a property in Lincoln Park. Quiet building, private security, completely off the books. You'll stay there while we work. I can't just disappear from my apartment. My landlord will notice. My job will be handled. I'll have someone collect your essentials and settle your accounts. As far as anyone at Luminaire knows, you had a family emergency and had to leave town immediately." Victor glanced up from his phone. "The Clara Whitmore identity is burned anyway. Whoever sent that text knows where you live, where you work. Staying there is suicide." He was right, but the casual efficiency with which he dismantled her life still made her stomach clench. 3 years of careful construction gone in a single conversation. "What about Rosa?" The words escaped before Alessandra could stop them. "My grandmother. If they're coming for me, they might already taken care of." Victor's voice softened slightly. "I made some calls while you were deciding whether to trust me. Your grandmother is currently on her way to a private care facility in Vermont. Top-tier medical staff, full security. She'll be told it's a wellness retreat, all expenses paid by an anonymous benefactor. She'll be safe." Alessandra stared at him, something hot and sharp lodging in her throat. "You did that before I even agreed to help you?" "I did that because my mother enjoyed a conversation with a stranger, and that stranger is now in danger because of it. Call it evening the scales." He met her eyes. "Besides, if we're going to work together, I need you focused. Worrying about your grandmother would be a distraction we can't afford." The car turned onto a tree-lined street where brownstones stood shoulder to shoulder, their facades elegant even in November's gray light. They pulled into an underground garage, the door closing behind them with mechanical finality. Victor's safe house occupied the entire top floor of the building. Alessandra followed him through rooms that spoke of money and taste. Hardwood floors, exposed brick, furniture that looked simultaneously comfortable and expensive. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the city, but she noticed the glass was thick, probably bulletproof. "The guest room is through there," Victor said, gesturing toward a hallway. "Bathrooms attached. There's clothing in the closet, various sizes. Help yourself to whatever fits." "You keep a safe house stocked with women's clothing?" Alessandra couldn't keep the skepticism from her voice. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "My sister stays here occasionally when she's in the city. You're about her size, I think. And before you ask, yes, she knows about the family business. No, she's not involved. She's a doctor in Boston, completely legitimate. The normalcy of it, a sister, a doctor, a life outside the violence and secrecy, struck Alessandra as almost surreal. She'd spent so long thinking of people like Victor as one-dimensional, all sharp edges and moral compromises, that evidence of actual family connections felt disorienting. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For all of this. I know it's a risk. Everything worth doing is. Victor pulled out his phone again, already moving to the next task. Get settled. Change if you want. I'm making calls to start gathering information. We'll meet in the main room in an hour to strategize. Alessandra retreated to the guest room, which was tastefully decorated in shades of cream and soft gray. The attached bathroom had heated floors and a shower with enough jets to qualify as a spa. The closet held an impressive array of clothing, all high quality, all exactly the kind of understated elegance that wealth whispered rather than shouted. She picked out jeans that fit almost perfectly and a soft cashmere sweater in deep blue, then stood in front of the mirror and did something she hadn't done in 3 years. She took out her contacts. Amber eyes stared back at her. Her mother's eyes. Rosa's eyes. The Vitale eyes that had stared out of family portraits for generations. Without the hazel lenses, her face looked different. Still her, but more herself. Sharper. More defined. Alessandra ran water until it steamed, then scrubbed her face until her skin was pink and clean. The dark brown hair dye was permanent. She'd need professional help to strip that. But just seeing her real eye color again felt like reclaiming a piece of herself she'd thought lost. When she emerged an hour later, Victor was standing at the windows with a tablet in his hand, talking quietly on the phone in what sounded like Italian. He ended the call as she approached, his eyes catching on her face with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You changed your eyes," he said. "They were uncomfortable anyway." Alessandra joined him at the window, looking out at the city that had been her hiding place and her prison. "Did you find anything?" "Possibly. I have someone checking the phone number that sent you the threat. It's a burner, but burners still have to be purchased somewhere. If we can trace the point of sale, we might get security footage." He swiped across the tablet screen, bringing up what looked like a family tree. "I also had my people pull together everything we know about your father's current organization. Key players, recent changes, anyone who might have motive to force a crisis." Alessandra studied the chart. Names she recognized, positions that had shifted since she'd left. Her father's underboss, Marco Salvi, still held his position. The consigliere, Thomas Brennan, was new. She didn't recognize that name. Several capos had changed, territories reallocated. "Who's Brennan?" she asked, pointing to the consigliere position. "Thomas Brennan, former prosecutor who got disillusioned with the justice system about 5 years ago. Your father brought him on as legal counsel initially, then promoted him to consigliere about 18 months ago after the previous one died of a heart attack." "Died or was killed?" Victor's expression was approving. "Good instinct. Officially died. But the timing was convenient, right when your father was trying to negotiate a truce with the Castellanos. A new consigliere could reshape those negotiations." Alessandra felt pieces clicking together in her mind. So Brennan arrives, the old consigliere conveniently dies, and suddenly my father is pushing hard for the Castellano marriage alliance, an alliance I disrupted by running. Which brings us to the question, who benefits from you disappearing? Victor zoomed in on another section of the chart. "Your siblings. You have 2 younger brothers, correct? Michael and Julian?" The names sent a pang through Alessandra's chest. Mickey had been 15 when she left, Julian barely 13. Just kids, caught in their father's world the same way she'd been. "They wouldn't send threats," she said firmly. "They're not like that. People change in 3 years, especially in this life." But Victor's tone was gentle, not accusatory. "What about extended family, cousins, anyone who'd move up if you were out of the picture?" Alessandra thought back to family gatherings, the complex web of relations and alliances. "My uncle Dominic runs the New Jersey operations. He has 3 sons, all involved in the business. But Dom was always loyal to my father. They're brothers, true brothers. I can't see him." Her phone buzzed. Not the smartphone, the burner phone she'd kept in her go bag, the one she used exclusively for encrypted emails to Rosa. She pulled it out with shaking hands. One new message, sender unknown. "They're planning something tonight. The warehouse on Polk Street, midnight. Come alone or people die. A friend." Victor read over her shoulder, his jaw tightening. A trap. Maybe. Or maybe someone on the inside is trying to help. By sending cryptic messages to a burner phone that supposedly nobody knows about? Victor took the phone, examining the message. "How many people have this number?" "Just Rosa, and she'd never give it out without..." Alessandra stopped. Unless someone found it. If they went through her things, her phone records, then they'd know you've been in contact. They'd know this number reaches you even if the Clara Whitmore identity doesn't. Victor handed back the phone. The question is whether this friend is genuine or whether someone's trying to draw you out into the open. Only one way to find out. Absolutely not. We're not walking into an obvious ambush. Alessandra felt a flare of irritation. I didn't ask for permission. If there's a chance this is real, if something's happening tonight that puts my family in danger, then we investigate properly. Victor's voice was firm. With surveillance, backup, a plan that doesn't involve you getting killed in the first 10 minutes. You came to me for help, remember? So let me actually help. They stared at each other, wills clashing. Alessandra had spent 3 years taking orders from no one, making her own decisions, surviving on her instincts. Deferring to someone else, even someone offering protection, went against every survival skill she'd honed. But he was right. Walking into a warehouse alone at midnight was suicide. And if she died, she couldn't expose whoever was betraying her father, couldn't protect her brothers, couldn't finish what she'd started by reaching out to Victor in the first place. Fine, she said. We do it your way. But I'm going to that warehouse. I wouldn't dream of stopping you, but we're going prepared. Victor made another call, speaking rapid-fire instructions in Italian. When he hung up, his expression was all business. I'm pulling in a team, 4 men, all former military, all people I trust with my life. We'll arrive early, scout the location, set up surveillance. If it's a trap, we'll know before you're anywhere near danger. If it's legitimate, we'll be positioned to intervene. And if they want me to come alone, then you'll appear to be alone. My men will be close enough to respond but far enough away to maintain the illusion. He pulled up a map on his tablet, showing the warehouse district near Polk Street. This area is mostly abandoned. The building boom bypassed it, left it to rot. Good place for an ambush, but also good for us. Lots of sight lines, multiple approach routes, plenty of cover. Alessandra studied the map, her mind already working through scenarios. If this is my father's people, they'll recognize me immediately, even with the dyed hair. We'll work on that. I have someone who can help with a quick transformation. Nothing permanent, just enough to create doubt at a distance. Victor checked his watch. We have 8 hours. I suggest we use them to gather as much intelligence as possible before walking into whatever this is. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of preparation. Victor's team arrived. 4 men who moved with the controlled precision of soldiers, who spoke in terse sentences and checked their weapons with casual efficiency. One of them, a woman named Sophia, with sharp eyes and gentle hands, spent an hour working on Alessandra's appearance. We're not trying to fool anyone up close, Sophia explained as she worked. Just create enough visual noise that people second-guess themselves. Different hair texture, different silhouette, different energy. She added extensions that made Alessandra's hair longer and wavier, applied subtle contouring that changed the shape of her face, and dressed her in clothing that altered her proportions. A bulky jacket, different boots. When she was finished, the woman in the mirror looked enough like Alessandra to be recognizable, but different enough to plant seeds of doubt. Good, Victor said, studying the transformation. Remember, at a distance, in low light, people will see what they expect to see. You look similar enough to make them think it might be you, different enough that they won't be certain. Uncertainty is a weapon, Alessandra murmured, remembering her father's lessons. Exactly. Victor handed her a small earpiece. Communication device. You'll be able to hear me and the team at all times. If things go wrong, if you feel threatened in any way, you say the word Nightingale, and we extract you immediately. No questions, no hesitation. Alessandra fitted the earpiece, feeling the weight of it, the connection it represented. For 3 years, she'd been alone. Now she had voices in her ear, back up in the shadows, someone watching out for her survival. It should have felt reassuring. Instead, it felt terrifying. Because relying on others meant trusting them, and trust was a luxury she'd learned to live without. What if this is all connected? She asked suddenly. The text telling me to come home, this mysterious friend warning me about tonight. What if someone's orchestrating all of it? Victor's expression was thoughtful. Then we're dealing with someone very clever. Someone who understands psychological manipulation and strategic timing. Someone like a consigliere, Alessandra said quietly. Someone exactly like a consigliere. Victor pulled up Thomas Brennan's file on the tablet. Former prosecutor means he understands how investigations work, how to construct narratives, how to manipulate information. If he wanted to destabilize your father's organization, he'd need to create crisis points, leverage pressure, force decisions. And me coming home would be a crisis point. Either I'd refuse and prove Antonio can't control his family, or I'd submit and he'd marry me off to Castellano, creating an alliance that might threaten whoever's planning a takeover. Unless the marriage was never the point. Victor's eyes were sharp with understanding. What if the goal was always to get you back in New York, in the family compound, where you could be used as a hostage or leverage or killed, Alessandra finished. Eliminate Antonio's daughter, his heir, and suddenly my brothers are the only options. Mickey's smart, but he's young. Julian's even younger. They could be controlled, shaped, turned into puppets. The thought made her sick. Her little brothers, who'd been sweet and funny and full of life, turned into weapons against their own father. Or worse, turned into monsters themselves, shaped by whoever won the coming war. We need proof, Victor said. Solid, irrefutable proof of who's behind this. And we need it before anyone else gets hurt. As the evening deepened into night, Alessandra found herself standing at the windows again, watching the city lights flicker against the darkness. Chicago had been her sanctuary, but it had also been a lie. A place where she could pretend to be someone else, pretend the past didn't matter, pretend she could escape the legacy written into her blood. But you couldn't outrun blood, couldn't hide from legacy. Eventually, it found you. You're thinking too hard, Victor said, appearing at her shoulder with 2 glasses of wine. I can practically hear it from across the room. Alessandra accepted the glass, surprised by the gesture. I'm thinking about my brothers, about what happens if we fail. We won't fail. You can't promise that. No, he admitted, but I can promise that I'll do everything in my power to protect them. And you. Why? The question had been building all day. Why are you really doing this? Preventing a war is one thing, but the level of resources you're committing, the risk you're taking, there has to be more to it. Victor was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the city. When he spoke, his voice was careful, measured. My father built an empire on violence and fear. When he died, I inherited that legacy. And I've spent the last 10 years trying to transform it into something else. Something that doesn't require quite so much blood. He took a sip of wine. But transformation requires stability. It requires the old powers to stay balanced, to not descend into chaos and war. If your family implodes, it creates a vacuum. And vacuums get filled by the worst kinds of people. So you're protecting the status quo. I'm protecting the possibility of change. Your father, for all his faults, is predictable, rational. He can be negotiated with. But if someone like Brennan takes over, if the violence escalates, if the old ways come roaring back, Victor shook his head. I don't want that for this city. And I don't want it for my mother, who deserves to live out her years in peace without worrying that her son's business will get him killed. It was honest, painfully honest. And it reminded Alessandra that Victor Moretti was a man caught between worlds, just like she was, trying to honor the past while building something better, trying to survive without becoming the very thing he'd inherited. Your mother is lucky to have you, she said quietly. I'm lucky to have her. She keeps me human. He turned to face Alessandra fully. Which is why I noticed you last night. Because she was happy. Because you gave her that. And I thought, anyone who can see my mother as a person rather than an obstacle, who can show that kind of instinctive kindness, is someone worth knowing. The air between them felt charged, dangerous in a way that had nothing to do with violence or threats. Alessandra stepped back, putting safe distance between them. We should go over the plan again, she said. Make sure everyone knows their positions. If Victor was disappointed by the deflection, he didn't show it. Agreed. Let's gather the team. The final briefing was conducted with military precision. Maps spread across the table, entry and exit points marked, communication protocols established. Alessandra would approach from the east, appearing to come alone. Victor's team would already be in position, 2 on the warehouse roof with sniper rifles, 2 on the ground for close support. Victor himself in a vehicle positioned for rapid response. You get there at 11:45, Victor said. Early enough to scout, late enough that you're not waiting around exposed. You wear the vest under your jacket. It's lightweight, won't show. You keep your phone on, recording everything. And at the first sign of trouble, I say Nightingale and you pull me out. Alessandra had the protocol memorized. I know. I need to hear you say it. Say the word right now. Nightingale. Again. Nightingale. Alessandra met his eyes. I'm not planning to be a hero, Victor. I just want to know what's happening to my family. Good. Heroes get killed. Smart people who follow the plan survive. He nodded to his team. We leave in 20 minutes. Everyone check your gear one more time. The drive to the warehouse district was tense and silent. Alessandra sat in the back of an unmarked sedan, Sophia driving with the same calm competence she'd shown earlier. The city passed by outside. Familiar streets becoming unfamiliar, neighborhoods declining from maintained to forgotten. When they were 5 blocks out, Sophia pulled over. This is your drop point, she said. The warehouse is straight ahead, 3 blocks east. Team's already in position. You're covered. Alessandra checked her phone, 11:38. Right on schedule. She pulled up her hood, tucked her hands into her pockets, and stepped out into the cold November night. The warehouse district was exactly as desolate as the maps had suggested. Empty buildings with broken windows, streets cracked and pitted. The industrial decay that happened when economics shifted and left entire neighborhoods behind. Alessandra's footsteps echoed against pavement as she walked, her breath clouding in the frigid air. We have you on visual, Victor's voice said in her ear, calm and steady. Keep walking. The warehouse is the large brick building on your right. No movement yet. Alessandra could see it now, 4 stories of abandoned industrial space, windows dark and empty as dead eyes. A loading dock on the side, bay doors rusted shut. One smaller entrance, the door slightly ajar. Someone wanted her to go inside. I see the entrance, she murmured, knowing the communication device would pick up her voice. Copy that. We're scanning for heat signatures. Stand by. A pause. Got 3 inside. Ground floor, northeast corner. They're waiting for you. 3 people. Not an army, not an overwhelming force, just 3. Alessandra approached the door, every instinct screaming at her to run, but she'd committed to this, had to see it through. She pushed the door open. The interior of the warehouse was vast and dark, illuminated only by streetlight filtering through broken windows. Concrete floors, metal support beams, the skeleton of industrial equipment long since stripped for parts. And in the corner, exactly where Victor's team had detected them, 3 figures stood beside a single battery-powered lantern. Alessandra? The voice was young, uncertain, familiar. Her heart stopped. Mickey? Her brother stepped into the light, and the years fell away. He was 18 now, tall and lean, with their father's dark hair and their mother's delicate features. But his eyes were haunted in a way that 15-year-olds' eyes shouldn't be. Beside him stood Julian, barely 16, looking terrified and determined in equal measure. And between them, slumped against a support beam with blood staining his expensive suit, was Marco Salvi, her father's underboss. Oh no, Alessandra breathed. No, no, no. What did you do? What we had to, Mickey said, his voice shaking. To warn you, to get you to listen. Alessandra, Dad's in trouble, real trouble, and we didn't know who else to trust. Alessandra's world tilted sideways. 3 years of careful distance, of constructed walls and deliberate forgetting, shattered in the space between heartbeats. Her brothers, her baby brothers, stood before her in an abandoned warehouse with a bleeding man between them, and every protective instinct she'd buried roared back to life. Victor, she said quietly, knowing he could hear her. Stand down. It's my brothers. They're not a threat. The wounded man? Victor's voice was tense in her ear. Marco Salvi, Dad's underboss. I need medical attention here. Now. On it. Sophia's moving with a medical kit. ETA 2 minutes. Alessandra crossed the warehouse floor, her footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. Mickey and Julian watched her approach with expressions caught between hope and fear, like they couldn't quite believe she was real. She stopped 3 feet away, close enough to see the shadows under their eyes, the tension in their shoulders, the way they both held themselves like soldiers expecting attack. They'd grown up in her absence, grown hard. Tell me what happened, she said. From the beginning. And don't leave anything out. Julian looked to Mickey, deferring to his older brother. Mickey swallowed hard, then began. It started about 6 months ago. Dad's been acting different, paranoid. He fired 3 of his senior captains, people who'd been with him for years. Said they were disloyal, but he never explained why. Then Brennan, the consigliere, started showing up more, making decisions, changing protocols. What kind of changes? Alessandra asked. Security rotations, communication systems. He convinced Dad to centralize everything through him, all the information flow, all the strategic planning. Said it would make things more efficient, more secure. Mickey's voice was bitter. But what it really did was put Brennan in control of who knows what, who sees what intelligence, who gets what orders. Marco coughed, a wet sound that made Alessandra wince. Blood flecked his lips as he spoke, his voice weak but determined. The kid's right. Brennan's been isolating Antonio, cutting him off from his own organization piece by piece. Anyone who questions it gets reassigned or disappears. Disappears? Alessandra felt ice crystallize in her veins. 3 men in the last 4 months, Julian said quietly. Officially, they quit, retired, moved on. But I heard Dad asking about one of them, Vincent Caruso. Vincent was with Dad since the beginning, loyal as they come. Dad wanted to reach out, and Brennan said Vincent had made it clear he wanted no contact. But I saw Dad's face. He didn't believe it. Sophia appeared in the doorway, medical kit in hand, moving with swift efficiency. She knelt beside Marco without a word, cutting away his jacket to assess the wound. Alessandra caught the brief shake of her head. Not good, but not immediately fatal. So Brennan's consolidating power, Alessandra said, pieces falling into place. Isolating Dad, removing loyal people, controlling the flow of information. Classic takeover strategy. But that doesn't explain why you're here with Marco, bleeding in an abandoned warehouse. Mickey and Julian exchanged a look that spoke volumes. Brothers who'd learned to communicate in silence, in the spaces between words where danger lived. We figured it out tonight, Mickey said. Marco called me, told me he'd found proof. Documents showing that Brennan's been skimming money, setting up shell companies, building his own power base inside Dad's organization. Marco said he was going to Dad with it, expose everything. He asked me to come with him as backup, someone Dad would trust. But Brennan found out, Alessandra guessed. We think someone in Marco's crew tipped him off. We were on our way to Dad's when we got ambushed. 3 cars, professional hitters. Marco got hit in the crossfire. Mickey's hands were shaking now, the adrenaline wearing off to reveal the fear underneath. We managed to lose them, but we couldn't go to Dad. Brennan's there, and if he knows we have proof, he'd kill you, Alessandra finished, or disappear you like he did the others. That's when Mickey remembered the burner number, Julian said. The one you used to contact Grandma Rosa. We found it in her things when Dad sent us to check on her last month. We didn't tell him. We kept it, just in case. And tonight, when everything went sideways, Mickey said maybe you'd help. Maybe you'd know what to do. Sophia finished bandaging Marco's wound, her movements competent and quick. Bullet went through clean. No major organs, but he's lost a lot of blood. He needs a hospital. No hospitals, Marco rasped. Brennan has people everywhere. They'd finish the job. We have a doctor, Victor's voice said in Alessandra's ear. Completely discreet, owes me several favors. I can have him at the safe house in 30 minutes. Alessandra made the decision in seconds. We're moving. All of you. Victor has a secure location and medical care. We go now. We go together. Who's Victor? Mickey's eyes narrowed with suspicion. Victor Moretti. And before you react, yes, I know what you're thinking. But right now, he's the only reason any of us are walking out of here alive. Alessandra met her brother's gaze steadily. Do you trust me? Mickey's jaw worked. He looked at Julian, at Marco bleeding against the support beam, at the warehouse shadows that could hide any number of threats. Then back to his sister, who'd been dead for 3 years and was suddenly standing before him offering salvation or damnation. Yeah, he said finally. Yeah, I trust you. Then let's move. Victor, we need extraction for 4. Already here. 2 SUVs pulled up outside the warehouse, engines running. Victor's team moved with military precision. two men carefully lifting Marco, Sophia covering their exit, weapons ready. Victor himself appeared in the doorway, his expression locked down tight, all business. In the vehicles. Now. We've got movement 3 blocks north, multiple cars converging on this location. They ran. Mickey and Julian flanked Alessandra as they sprinted for the SUVs, muscle memory kicking in, protecting their sister the way they'd been trained to protect family. They piled into the first vehicle, Marco and the security team in the second, and the cars peeled away from the warehouse just as headlights appeared in the distance behind them. Are they following? Alessandra asked, twisted in her seat to look back. Not yet, the driver said, a compact man with scarred knuckles and cold eyes. But they will be. Brennan's people are thorough. Mickey was staring at Victor, recognition and hostility warring on his face. You're working with Victor Moretti? Alessandra, what the hell? Dad would want his sons alive more than he'd want to maintain some outdated rivalry, Alessandra cut in. And right now, Victor's the only person with the resources to keep us breathing long enough to expose Brennan. She's right, Marco said from the other SUV, his voice crackling through the vehicle's communication system. Kid, I know this looks bad, but your sister's thinking clearly. We need allies, and the Morettis are the best option we've got. Julian was quieter, watching the city blur past the windows. Alessandra, he said softly, we thought you were dead. Dad said you died in a boating accident. There was a funeral and everything. The pain in his voice cut deeper than any blade. Alessandra reached across the seat and gripped his hand, feeling how much bigger it was than she remembered. When had he grown so much? When had both of them stopped being children? I know, she said. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, but I couldn't stay. Dad was going to force me into a marriage I didn't want, and I just couldn't. The Castellano thing, Mickey said, understanding dawning. That's what you were running from. We heard about it later, after you were gone. Dad never talked about it, but Uncle Dominic mentioned it once when he was drunk. Said Dad had been planning an alliance marriage and you'd refused. I did more than refuse. I disappeared. And in doing so, I weakened Dad's position, made him look like he couldn't control his own family. Alessandra's throat tightened. I thought I was choosing freedom, but maybe I was just choosing a different kind of prison. Victor spoke from the front passenger seat, his voice cutting through the emotion. You chose survival. There's no shame in that. And the situation you left behind, that was already compromised. Brennan was likely already in position, already planning his move. Your disappearance was a complication for him, not a cause. How do you know? Mickey challenged. Because I've been watching your family's organization for 2 years, ever since Brennan showed up. I knew something was off about him from the beginning. Former prosecutors don't usually switch sides without serious motivation. So I started paying attention, tracking movements, monitoring communications, and what I found was a man systematically dismantling Antonio Vitale's power base from the inside. The SUV turned into the underground garage of Victor's building. They piled out, Marco being carefully transferred to a wheelchair that Sophia produced from somewhere. The elevator ride to the top floor was silent and tense, everyone processing the rapidly shifting landscape of alliances and threats. Inside the safe house, Victor directed Marco to a bedroom where his doctor, a tired-looking man in his 50s with gentle hands, was already setting up equipment. Mickey and Julian stood in the middle of the living room like soldiers awaiting orders, clearly out of their depth, but trying not to show it. Sit, Alessandra said, gesturing to the couch. You look like you're about to collapse. They sat, and the moment they did, the soldier masks cracked. Julian's hands were shaking. Mickey's eyes were too bright, shock and adrenaline and fear finally catching up. Alessandra found herself doing something she hadn't done in 3 years. She pulled her brothers into a hug. They clung to her like drowning men, and she held them the way she used to when they were small and scared of thunderstorms before their world had become bullets and betrayal. It's okay, she murmured. You're safe. I've got you. We missed you, Julian whispered. So much. Every day. Mickey pulled back first, swiping at his eyes with angry efficiency. We can't fall apart. Not now. We need a plan. He was so much like their father it hurt. All strategy and survival, emotions locked away where they couldn't be weaponized. Victor returned from checking on Marco, carrying a tray with coffee and sandwiches. Eat, he said, setting it down. You can't think clearly on an empty stomach, and we have a lot to figure out. Mickey eyed the food suspiciously. How do we know you're not going to poison us or turn us over to Brennan? If I wanted you dead, you'd already be dead. If I wanted to turn you over, I'd have let those cars catch you at the warehouse. Victor's voice was matter of fact, not offended. But neither of those outcomes serves my interests. What serves my interests is a stable power structure in this city, which requires Antonio Vitale to remain in control of his organization. Brennan staging a coup doesn't accomplish that. So you're helping us to help yourself, Mickey said. Exactly. I find honesty simplifies things. Victor poured coffee with steady hands. Now, let's talk about what we know and what we need to know. You said Marco found proof of Brennan's activities. What kind of proof? Mickey pulled a flash drive from his pocket, the gesture protective. Financial records, shell companies, bank transfers, it's all here. Marco spent months piecing it together. May I? Victor held out his hand. Mickey looked at Alessandra. She nodded. Slowly, Mickey handed over the flash drive. Victor plugged it into his laptop, and for several minutes, the only sound in the room was the soft clicking of keys as he navigated through files. His expression grew darker with each document he opened. This is sophisticated, he said finally. Brennan's been siphoning money from multiple revenue streams, but small enough amounts that it wouldn't trigger immediate red flags. He's also been paying off key people in your father's organization, bribes disguised as bonuses or legitimate business expenses. And here, Victor pulled up another document. Here's something interesting. Brennan's been in communication with the Castellano family. Regular meetings over the past 6 months. Alessandra leaned over his shoulder to read. The marriage alliance. He's been negotiating behind Dad's back? Not negotiating, conspiring. Victor scrolled through email threads, his jaw tight. Look at the timeline. These communications started right after your father officially declared you dead. Brennan reached out to Joseph Castellano with a proposal. Eliminate the old guard in both families, install new leadership that would be more amenable to a full merger rather than just an alliance. A merger? Julian looked confused. That's not how these things work. Families don't merge. They're separate organizations. They are when there's profit to be made, Victor said grimly. Castellano's been struggling. Legal problems, internal conflicts, territory disputes. He's desperate for a win, and Brennan's offering him the Vitale organization on a platter if he helps facilitate the takeover. Mickey was on his feet, pacing. So Brennan wants to kill our father, take over the family, then merge it with the Castellanos and rule both organizations. That's the plan, but it's more complicated than simple murder. Victor pulled up another document. Brennan's smart. He knows that just killing Antonio would create chaos, possible retaliation, a power vacuum that would be hard to control. So he's been systematically weakening your father's position first, removing loyal people, isolating him, making him look paranoid and unstable to the rest of the organization. So when Brennan makes his move, Alessandra said slowly, it'll look like a mercy, like he's saving the organization from a leader who's lost his grip. Exactly. And with the Castellano alliance already in place, he'll have the resources to crush any resistance quickly. Victor's expression was grave. This is a well-planned coup, months, maybe years in the making. The room fell silent as they absorbed the implications. Alessandra watched her brothers process it, the betrayal, the danger, the complexity of the trap their father had walked into. When? Mickey asked. When is he planning to make his move? Victor scrolled through more files. Based on these communications, soon, within the week, there's a shipment coming in from overseas, weapons, high value. Brennan's been positioning it as a major deal, something that requires Antonio's personal attention. But I'd bet anything it's a setup. Get Antonio in one place, away from his usual security, and take him out, Mickey finished, and make it look like a deal gone bad. Enemy action, not internal betrayal. Your brother's smart, Victor said to Alessandra. He's Antonio Vitale's son, she replied. He was trained for this. Julian had been quiet, but now he spoke up. So what do? We can't just call Dad and warn him. Brennan's monitoring all communications. We'd tip him off that we know, and he'd accelerate his timeline. We need to get to Dad in person, Mickey said. Show him the evidence. Make him see what Brennan's doing. Walking into the family compound is suicide, Alessandra countered. Brennan has people there, security, staff, probably half of Dad's own men. You'd be dead before you reached his office. So we're just supposed to hide here while Brennan kills our father? The anguish in Mickey's voice was raw and real. Alessandra felt it echoing in her own chest. The impossible choice between safety and loyalty, between survival and family. Victor stood, crossing to the windows. There's another option. A dangerous one, but possible. What? Alessandra asked. The shipment. The one Brennan's using as bait. What if we intercept it first? Mickey frowned. How does that help? Think about it. Brennan's entire plan relies on that shipment being the trap. If it doesn't exist, if we take it before he can use it, his timeline collapses. He'd have to improvise, create a new plan on the fly. And people make mistakes when they improvise. Plus, Alessandra added, seeing where Victor was going, if we have the shipment, we have leverage. Something Brennan needs, something he can't complete his coup without. Exactly. We intercept the weapons, we document everything about Brennan's involvement, and we use that evidence to approach Antonio directly, not through Brennan's communication channels. Face to face. Julian was shaking his head. You're talking about stealing from our own family. That's survival, Mickey interrupted, and it's smart. Victor's right. We need leverage, and we need proof Brennan can't explain away. The shipment gives us both. The doctor emerged from the bedroom, wiping his hands on a towel. Your man will live. The wound's clean, no infection. He needs rest and antibiotics, but he'll recover. Can he travel in a few days? Victor asked. If necessary, yes, but I wouldn't recommend it. Noted. Thank you, David. The doctor packed up his equipment and left, and Alessandra realized how late it had gotten. Past 2 a.m, the city dark and quiet outside the windows. You both need sleep, she said to her brothers. There's a guest room down the hall. Go, rest. We'll plan in the morning. Mickey looked like he wanted to argue, but exhaustion was written in every line of his body. Julian was already swaying on his feet. They retreated to the guest room, and Alessandra heard the door close softly behind them. She turned to find Victor watching her, his expression unreadable. They're good kids, he said quietly. Brave, smart. Your father trained them well. Too well. They shouldn't have to be this brave. They should be in college, worrying about exams and relationships, not dodging assassins and planning heists. They're in the life, whether you wanted it for them or not. I know. Alessandra sank onto the couch, suddenly bone-tired. I spent 3 years telling myself I'd escaped, that I could build a different life, be a different person, but the moment they needed me, I came running right back. Victor sat beside her, careful to maintain respectful distance. You came back because they're family, because love is stronger than fear. That's not weakness, isn't it? If I'd stayed away, they'd have figured it out themselves. Mickey's smart enough, and Marco clearly had everything documented. They didn't need me. Yes, they did, because evidence without trust is just paper. But you're their sister. They trust you in a way they can't trust anyone else in their world. That trust is what will get them through this. Alessandra looked at him, really looked. Victor Moretti, crime boss and strategist, sitting in his expensive safe house talking about trust and family with a gentleness that seemed at odds with everything she thought she knew about men like him. Your mother really did change you, didn't she? She said. She showed me there was more to life than power, more to legacy than fear. He smiled slightly. My father wanted an empire. My mother wanted a son. She won. I wish my mother had won, Alessandra said softly. She died when I was 12, cancer. After that, it was just Dad and his world. No buffer, no softness. I'm sorry. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the kind of quiet that only exists in the small hours of the morning when the world feels paused. The shipment, Alessandra said finally. When is it arriving? 3 days, Wednesday night, at a warehouse near the port. Brennan's been handling all the logistics personally, which in itself is suspicious. Consigliere don't usually involve themselves in operational details. He can't risk anyone else knowing the truth, that it's a trap, not a legitimate deal. Exactly. So he's isolated the information, which works in our favor. Fewer people to notice when we take it. Alessandra's mind was already working through scenarios, possibilities, risks. We'll need a team, people we can trust, and we'll need to move fast, in and out, before anyone realizes what happened. I have people, former military, current private security. They're loyal to me, not to whatever politics happen to be swirling around. Victor's voice was confident. But this needs to be clean. No casualties if we can avoid them. The goal is to take the shipment and disappear, not start a war. Agreed. We're trying to prevent violence, not cause it. Alessandra stood, restless energy driving her to pace. And once we have the shipment, how do we approach my father? Carefully, publicly. Somewhere Brennan can't control the environment. Victor pulled up a calendar on his phone. There's a charity gala Thursday night. Major event, high society, lots of witnesses. Your father attends every year. It's good for his legitimate business image. If we approach him there, in front of all those people, Brennan can't make us disappear without creating a scene. A gala. You want us to expose a criminal conspiracy at a charity gala? I want us to approach your father in a place where murdering his children would be inconvenient. The exposition happens later in private once we have his attention. It was crazy, risky, dependent on too many variables lining up perfectly. It was also the best plan they had. Okay, Alessandra said, we intercept the shipment Wednesday. We approach Dad Thursday. And in between, we keep my brother safe and pray that Brennan doesn't figure out what we're doing. Prayer's optional. I prefer preparation. Victor's smile was sharp. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start planning in earnest. Alessandra made her way to her room, but sleep felt impossible. She stood at the window instead, watching Chicago's lights, thinking about the boys asleep down the hall who'd grown into men in her absence, thinking about her father, isolated and endangered, thinking about the life she'd tried to escape and the way it had pulled her back with invisible threads stronger than steel. Somewhere in the city, Thomas Brennan was planning a coup, building his empire on betrayal and blood, and he had no idea that the daughter everyone thought was dead had just returned from the grave with an army at her back. The next morning brought strategy sessions and logistics planning. Mickey and Julian emerged looking better after some sleep, though tension still radiated from both of them. Marco joined them, pale but determined, his wound clearly painful but manageable. Victor's dining table became a war room. Maps of the port, blueprints of the warehouse, schedules for security rotations. They planned like soldiers because that's what they were. Soldiers in a war most of the city didn't know was being fought. The shipment arrives at 2200 hours, Victor said, pointing to the warehouse on the map. 2 trucks, 8 guards, standard security protocol for high-value cargo. Brennan will have his own people there as well, probably another 4 to 6 men. So we're outnumbered, Julian observed. In bodies, yes, but we have surprise, superior positioning, and better training. Victor gestured to 3 points on the map. My team sets up here, here, and here. Sniper positions with clear sightlines. When the trucks arrive, we disable communications first. Then we neutralize guards, non-lethal, if possible, but the priority is securing the cargo. Mickey studied the map with a professional eye. What about extraction? Once we have the shipment, we need to move it somewhere safe before Brennan realizes it's gone. Already arranged. I have a secure facility in Gary, Indiana. Not glamorous, but completely off the books. We move the weapons there, lock them down, and use them as leverage when we meet with your father. And if something goes wrong? Alessandra asked. If Brennan's people are better prepared than we think? Then we abort. No cargo is worth your lives. Victor's voice was firm. I'm not sending anyone into a suicide mission. We go in smart, we move fast, and if the situation deteriorates, we extract immediately. The plan was solid, professional. It should have made Alessandra feel better, but she couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something. Some variable they hadn't accounted for. Some piece of Brennan's strategy they didn't see. That night, while everyone else slept, she found Victor still awake in his study, reviewing documents on his laptop. Can't sleep? He asked, looking up. Too much to think about. Alessandra settled into the chair across from him. Tell me honestly, what are our chances? Of succeeding Wednesday, 70-30 in our favor, assuming no major surprises, and of surviving Thursday's confrontation with my father? Victor was quiet for a moment. That depends entirely on how he reacts to seeing his supposedly dead daughter alive, and how much he's willing to believe about his most trusted advisor's betrayal. So you don't know? No, he admitted. I don't, but I believe in preparing for the worst while hoping for the best, and I believe in you. The words settled between them, unexpected and warm. Alessandra met his eyes, seeing sincerity there. Trust. Something that might have been the beginning of respect. Thank you, she said quietly, for all of this. For helping them. For helping me. Partners help each other. That's what we are now, partners. Are we? Alessandra asked. Or am I just a useful tool in your larger strategy to maintain stability? Victor closed his laptop, giving her his full attention. You want honesty? Fine. Yes, preventing a war serves my interests, but so does knowing you're safe. So does seeing your brothers protected. Somewhere between planning strategy and watching you navigate this impossible situation with grace and courage, it became personal. The air between them shifted, charged with possibility, dangerous possibility. Alessandra stood, needing distance. We should keep this professional, at least until this is over. Agreed. But after? Victor's voice was soft. After you're safe and your family's secure and the crisis is past. After, we'll see, if there is an after. She left before he could respond, her heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the man in the study and the impossible situation pulling them together. Wednesday arrived too fast and too slow at once. The day was spent in final preparations, checking weapons, reviewing the plan, ensuring everyone knew their role. As evening fell, Alessandra found herself helping Mickey check his gear, a strange echo of childhood when she'd helped him pack for school trips. You don't have to come, she said. You and Julian could stay here. Stay safe. Not a chance. This is our family too. Our fight. Mickey's jaw was set, stubborn. Besides, someone needs to watch your back. I have Victor's team for that. You have us too. Family watches out for family. That's how it works. Alessandra squeezed his shoulder, emotion tightening her throat. When did you get so grown up? When you left. Someone had to step up. The words weren't accusation, just fact, but they still cut. At 2100 hours, they moved out. 3 vehicles, Victor's full team, and 4 members of the Vitali family about to steal from their own organization to save it. The night was cold and clear, stars invisible against Chicago's light pollution. Alessandra sat in the lead vehicle, watching the city pass by, wondering if this would be the last time she saw it. Wondering if they were brave or just desperate. Wondering if there was any real difference. The warehouse district near the port was industrial and isolated, exactly the kind of place where illegal shipments arrived. Victor's team moved into position with military efficiency. 3 snipers on surrounding rooftops, 4 ground team members ready to move on the warehouse itself. 2200 hours came and went. No trucks. Stand by, Victor's voice said over the comm. Sometimes shipments run late. But Alessandra's instincts were screaming. Something was wrong. Something was... Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Looking for something? You'll have to do better than that. TB. Her blood turned to ice. Victor, she said urgently, it's a trap. Brennan knows. He knows everything. And that's when the first gunshots shattered the night. The muzzle flash came from the rooftop to the east, bright and deadly in the darkness. Victor's sniper position. But the shots weren't coming from Victor's team. They were aimed at them. All units, we're compromised. Victor's voice cracked through the comm, steady despite the chaos. Abort mission. Fall back to extraction point Beta. Alessandra was already moving, pulling Mickey and Julian down behind the vehicle as bullets pinged off metal and concrete. Her mind raced through possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. Brennan had known, had anticipated their move, had set his own trap within Victor's trap. How? Mickey gasped, pressed against the car door. How did he know? Doesn't matter right now. Alessandra's training kicked in, years of her father's lessons overriding panic. We need to move, stay low, stay behind cover, and follow Victor's team. Sophia appeared beside them, weapon drawn, her face grim. This way. We have a secondary route. They ran in a crouch, using parked vehicles and shipping containers for cover. More gunfire erupted behind them. Victor's ground team engaging with Brennan's forces, buying time for the retreat. Alessandra caught a glimpse of Victor himself, directing his people with hand signals, his weapon steady as he laid down covering fire. The extraction vehicle was a nondescript van 2 blocks away. They sprinted the final distance, Julian stumbling and Mickey catching him, Alessandra's heart in her throat, until they were inside and the door slammed shut. The driver, one of Victor's men, had the engine running before they'd even sat down. Tires squealed as they peeled away from the port, the sounds of gunfire fading behind them. "Is everyone out?" Alessandra demanded, counting heads. Mickey, Julian, Sophia, the driver, 2 other security personnel. "Where's Victor?" "Still coordinating the retreat," Sophia said, her voice tight. "He'll extract with the rear guard." "You mean he's still back there?" Alessandra's voice rose despite her attempt at control. "You left him?" "He ordered us to get you and your brothers out. Those were direct orders." Sophia's expression was stone. "Victor can handle himself." The comm crackled to life. "All units clear. Repeat. All units have extracted. 2 wounded, no fatalities. Heading to Safe House Alpha." Relief flooded through Alessandra so powerfully it left her shaking. Victor was alive. His team was alive. They'd walked into an ambush and somehow made it out. But Brennan knew. Everything. The Safe House Alpha turned out to be a different location than where they'd been staying. A warehouse in an industrial area that had been converted into a surprisingly comfortable living space. Victor's team arrived 20 minutes after Alessandra's group, and she watched from the window as he emerged from the lead vehicle, blood on his sleeve but moving under his own power. She met him at the door before he'd fully crossed the threshold. "You're hurt." "Graze. Sophia can patch it." His eyes scanned her face, her brothers behind her. "Everyone okay?" "Shaken but whole. Victor, how did he know?" "Inside information. Had to be." Victor moved past her into the main room, already shifting into strategy mode despite the blood seeping through his sleeve. "Someone told Brennan we were coming. Someone who knew enough details to set up counter positions." Marco, who'd insisted on coming despite his injury, was pale but focused. "We didn't tell anyone outside this room, which means the leak is in this room," Mickey finished, his voice hard. Suspicion rippled through the space like poison. Alessandra watched everyone's faces. Sophia, with her steady competence, the security team who'd fought beside them, Marco bleeding and loyal, her own brothers, who she trusted with her life. Victor raised a hand, commanding silence. "Or it means Brennan has surveillance capabilities we didn't account for. Electronic monitoring, tracking devices, informants we don't know about." He fixed each person with a look. "But right now, paranoia is our enemy. We need to think clearly." "He texted me," Alessandra said, pulling out her phone to show the message. "Right before the shooting started, he wanted us to know he was ahead of us." Victor read the text, his jaw tightening. "TB Thomas Brennan. He's not even hiding anymore." That's confident. "Or desperate," Marco offered. "We got close enough to make him reveal himself. That means we rattled him." "Maybe. But it also means he knows Alessandra is alive. Knows she's working with me. Knows her brothers are involved." Victor began pacing, thinking out loud. He'll use this. Somehow, he'll weaponize it against Antonio. Julian, who'd been quiet since the shooting, spoke up. "He'll tell Dad that we betrayed the family, that we allied with the Morettis against our own people." "Exactly. And Antonio won't know who to believe. His consigliere, who's been by his side for months, or children who've been keeping secrets." Victor stopped pacing, his expression grim. "We've lost the element of surprise. Brennan knows we're moving against him, which means he'll accelerate his timeline." "The charity gala," Alessandra said. "It's tomorrow night. If Brennan's planning to move against Dad, he might do it then. Public event, Antonio away from his usual security, easy to make it look like enemy action. Or he might move tonight." Mickey's voice was tense. "Why wait when he knows we're trying to stop him?" The room fell silent as they absorbed the implications. They tried to outmaneuver Brennan and had instead tipped their hand. Now Antonio Vitale was in immediate danger, and they had no way to warn him that didn't play right into Brennan's narrative of betrayal. Victor's phone rang, shattering the tension. He checked the screen, frowned, then answered. Yes? A pause. His expression shifted from surprise to calculation. When? I see. And you're certain? Yes. Yes, we'll be there. Well, he ended the call and looked at Alessandra with an expression she couldn't quite read. That was my contact inside the police department. There's been an incident at your father's estate. Multiple 911 calls reporting gunfire. Responding officers are being held at the gate. Whoever's inside won't let them enter the property. Alessandra's world tilted. We have to go. Now. It could be another trap, Sophia warned. I don't care. Alessandra was already moving toward the door. That's my father. If Brennan's making his move, we need to be there. Victor caught her arm. Wait. Think. If we rush in without a plan, we're dead. But if we're smart about this, he pulled up a map on his tablet showing the Vitale estate in Long Island. There's a service entrance here on the east side, used for deliveries, maintenance, less guarded than the main gate. If we can get in that way, we'd still be outnumbered, Marco interrupted. Brennan will have his people positioned throughout the house. We'd be walking into a kill box. Unless we bring our own army, Mickey said slowly. Victor, how many men can you mobilize on short notice? Enough. But deploying Moretti forces to a Vitale stronghold? That's an act of war by any definition. Even if we're trying to help, it'll look like an invasion. So we make it clear we're not invading, Alessandra said, the plan forming even as she spoke. We call the police. We tell them there's the hostage situation. We make this public, official. Brennan can't execute a quiet coup if there are cops and cameras everywhere. Victor's smile was sharp with approval. And in the chaos, we slip in through the service entrance, get to Antonio before Brennan can. It's risky, Sophia said. Everything's risky, Alessandra countered. But doing nothing guarantees Brennan wins. The decision was made. Victor made calls mobilizing his forces while Sophia coordinated with the police contact, feeding them information about a possible hostage situation at the Vitale estate. Mickey and Julian checked weapons with the practiced ease of men raised in violence. Marco, despite his wounds, insisted on coming. You need someone Antonio will trust on sight, he said. I've been his underboss for 12 years. He'll listen to me. They moved out within 30 minutes, a convoy of 3 vehicles heading toward Long Island. It was past midnight, the highway mostly empty, city lights giving way to suburban darkness. Alessandra sat between her brothers, their shoulders touching, drawing strength from proximity. I'm sorry, she said quietly, for leaving, for making you think I was dead, for all of it. Don't, Mickey said. You did what you had to do. We get that now. Still, 3 years is a long time to grieve someone who wasn't actually gone. Julian squeezed her hand. You're here now. That's what matters. The Vitale estate came into view, a sprawling property behind high walls and iron gates, the kind of place that screamed old money and older secrets. Police cars were indeed gathered at the main entrance, their lights painting the night in red and blue. Victor's convoy bypassed them, heading for the service entrance on the property's east side. Okay, Victor said over the comm. Sophia and Team 1 are staying with the vehicles, ready for quick extraction. Team 2 is with me. We're going in through the service entrance. Marco, you're on point since you know the layout. Alessandra, you and your brothers stay in the middle of the formation. If shooting starts, we shoot back, Mickey finished. I was going to say take cover, but sure, that works too. They left the vehicles in a small access road hidden by trees. The service entrance was a simple gate, locked but not reinforced. One of Victor's men had it open in under a minute, and they slipped onto the estate grounds like shadows. The main house was ablaze with light, visible through the trees. As they crept closer, Alessandra could hear voices, shouting, arguing. A single gunshot cracked through the night, making everyone freeze. That came from the east wing, Marco whispered. Antonio's study. They moved faster now, urgency overriding caution. The house loomed before them, massive and somehow menacing in the darkness. They entered through a side door that Marco unlocked with a key he still carried, emerging into a service corridor lined with cleaning supplies and staff quarters. The corridor opened into the main house, and that's where they found the first body. One of Antonio's guards, throat cut, eyes staring at nothing. Mickey made a small sound of distress. He'd known this man, had probably grown up seeing him around the estate. Julian looked away, his face pale. "Stay focused," Victor murmured. "Mourn later. Survive now." They moved through the house like ghosts, stepping over two more bodies, both Antonio's people. The violence had been swift and brutal, designed to eliminate loyalists before they could mount a defense. Brennan's coup wasn't subtle anymore. It was a massacre. The study doors were ahead, massive oak that had been imported from Italy 3 generations ago. Voices filtered through, Antonio's raised in anger, and another voice smooth and calm. Brennan. Victor positioned his team, 2 flanking the door, 2 covering their rear, weapons ready. He looked at Alessandra, a question in his eyes. She nodded. Together, they burst through the doors. The scene inside was a tableau of betrayal frozen in time. Antonio Vitale stood behind his desk, blood on his temple, a gun in his hand. Brennan was across the room with 5 armed men, his own weapon pointed at Antonio's chest. And caught between them, held at gunpoint by one of Brennan's people, was a woman Alessandra hadn't seen in 3 years, her Aunt Maria, Uncle Dominic's wife, looking terrified and furious in equal measure. "Nobody move," Victor commanded, his weapon trained on Brennan. 8 guns swung toward the door. For a heartbeat, the room teetered on the edge of violence. Then Antonio's eyes found Alessandra, and the gun in his hand wavered. "Alessandra!" His voice was rough, disbelieving. You're dead. I buried you. You buried a lie, Dad. I'm very much alive." Alessandra stepped forward despite the weapons, despite the danger. "And you need to listen to me. Brennan's been betraying you, planning to kill you. Everything. The paranoia, the fired guards, the isolation, it's all been him. He's staging a coup." "She's lying, Antonio." Brennan's voice was perfectly calm. "She's been working with the Morettis against you, against the family. Her and your sons, they've betrayed you. Why else would they be here with Victor Moretti and his men?" Antonio's face was a war between hope and suspicion. "Mickey? Julian? Is this true?" Mickey stepped forward, his voice steady despite the weapons. "Marco found proof, Dad. Financial records showing Brennan's been stealing from you, paying off your people, working with the Castellanos to take over both families. We tried to warn you, but he controls all the communications. We had to bring Alessandra. We had to get help." "Help from the Morettis?" Antonio's laugh was bitter. "From our rivals? From the only person with resources to keep us alive long enough to reach you," Alessandra said. "Victor's been helping us, yes, but not because he wants to destroy you, because he wants to prevent the war Brennan's trying to start." "Convenient story." Brennan's weapon didn't waver. "She shows up with the enemy, claims I'm the traitor, and expects you to believe her over me, over the man who's been loyal to you for years." "Loyal?" Marco's voice was weak but fierce. "You had me shot. You sent your people after me when I found the evidence. And you've been systematically murdering Antonio's most loyal men, making it look like retirement or accidents." "Marco?" Antonio's voice cracked. "What happened to you?" "Brennan's people ambushed us, shot me when I tried to bring you the proof." Marco pulled out the flash drive, holding it up despite the pain the movement cost him. "It's all here. Every transaction, every bribe, every communication with the Castellanos, everything you need to see who's really betraying you." Brennan's mask finally cracked. His expression shifted from calm to calculation, eyes darting between Antonio and the doors, assessing odds and exit strategies. "Don't," Victor said quietly, reading Brennan's thoughts. "You're surrounded. The police are outside. My people have every exit covered. The only way this ends without more bloodshed is if you stand down." "The police?" Antonio looked confused. "We called them," Alessandra explained. "Reported a hostage situation. They're probably negotiating entry right now." "Which means whatever happens in this room, it's about to become very public, very witnessed." The calculation in Brennan's eyes shifted again. Public meant cameras, meant scrutiny, meant his carefully constructed narrative crumbling under investigative pressure. "You think the police matter?" Brennan's smile was cold. "I have contacts throughout the department. Judges, prosecutors, detectives. I was one of them, remember? They'll believe my version, that the Morettis attacked the Vitale estate, that I was trying to protect Antonio from a hostile takeover." Except you're forgetting something, Victor said. I have contacts too, and mine are currently briefing those officers on exactly what they'll find when they enter this house. The bodies of loyal Vitali soldiers, the financial evidence of your embezzlement, the communications with the Castellanos, all of it documented, time-stamped, irrefutable. Brennan's weapon shifted slightly, tracking toward Victor. You're bluffing. Am I? Your people killed 3 of Antonio's guards getting to this room. Their bodies are evidence. Evidence that will be collected, photographed, investigated. You can control individual cops, but you can't control an entire crime scene. Not when it's this public. The standoff stretched, tension coiling tighter. Alessandra watched her father's face, saw him processing everything. The daughter he'd thought dead, the sons he'd underestimated, the consigliere he'd trusted, the rival he'd never quite understood. Decisions played out across his weathered features, years of survival instinct warring with emotional chaos. Antonio, Brennan said, his voice shifting to something almost pleading. Think about what they're asking you to believe. Your daughter faked her death and allied with our enemies. Your sons conspired behind your back. Your underboss stole confidential files. And I'm the traitor? I, who've been by your side every day for 2 years? Show me the flash drive, Antonio said quietly. Marco moved forward, carefully, keeping his hands visible. He placed the drive on the desk between them, then stepped back. Antonio picked it up, turning it over in his hands like it might contain poison. If I look at this, if what you say is true, then I've been blind, manipulated, weak. Not weak, Alessandra said softly. Human. He's good at this, Dad. He fooled everyone. That's what makes him dangerous. And if you're lying, if this is all an elaborate scheme to turn me against my own people, to make me vulnerable, then shoot me. Alessandra's voice was steady. I came back knowing you might not believe me. But I came back anyway because you're my father, because Mickey and Julian are my brothers, because family, real family, is worth dying for. Something in Antonio's face crumbled, some wall that had been holding back 3 years of grief and rage and loss. He looked at his daughter, really looked, and she saw recognition there, not of her face, which had changed, but of something deeper. Something that couldn't be disguised or faked. You have your mother's eyes, he whispered. I'd forgotten. The contacts hid them, but you have her eyes. I do, and she'd want you to look at that drive. She'd want you to know the truth, whatever it costs. Antonio's hand trembled as he inserted the flash drive into his computer. The screen flickered to life, displaying files and folders. He clicked through them, his expression growing darker with each document. Financial records showing systematic theft, communications with the Castellanos discussing the merger. Lists of loyal soldiers marked for elimination, some already crossed off. The room was silent except for the clicking of the mouse, the soft sounds of Antonio's breathing getting heavier, angrier. You! Antonio's voice was barely controlled rage. You took everything I built, everything my father built, and you were going to destroy it all for what? Money? Power? Brennan's composure finally shattered completely. For evolution. You were stuck in the past, Antonio. All your outdated codes, your pathetic honor, your refusal to adapt. The Castellanos and I could have built an empire. A real empire, not this crumbling relic you're clinging to. By killing me? By murdering my people? By doing what was necessary. Brennan's weapon swung back to Antonio. And it's not too late. You die here, tonight, killed by Moretti invaders. I consolidate power, complete the merger, and the organization survives, stronger than ever. Over my dead body, Mickey said. That can be arranged. One of Brennan's men shifted his aim toward Mickey. Everything happened at once. Victor fired, taking down the man threatening Mickey. Antonio dove behind his desk, his own weapon coming up. Brennan's people opened fire, bullets shredding the study's expensive furnishings. Alessandra grabbed Julian and pulled him down as glass exploded above them. The gunfight was brief and brutal. Victor's team had better positioning, better training. Within seconds, 3 of Brennan's men were down, the other 2 surrendering when they realized they were outgunned. But Brennan himself had disappeared in the chaos. Aunt Maria! Julian shouted, seeing her crumpled on the floor. Alessandra reached her first, checking for wounds. Maria was breathing, conscious, just terrified and smart enough to have hit the ground when the shooting started. I'm okay, Maria gasped. I'm okay. He took me hostage when he realized you were coming. Used me to keep Antonio from fighting back. Where's Dominic? Alessandra asked. Locked in the wine cellar with half the household staff. Brennan's people secured them early in the siege. Maria clutched Alessandra's hand, tears streaming. I thought you were dead. We all did. The funeral? Later, Alessandra said gently. Right now we need to find Brennan. But Brennan, it turned out, was already gone. Victor's perimeter team reported seeing someone flee toward the woods at the property's edge, moving fast. By the time they could pursue, he'd vanished into the darkness. He'll run, Marco said, wincing as Sophia checked his wound, which had started bleeding again from the movement. Go underground. He's smart enough to have contingencies. Let him run, Antonio said, emerging from behind his desk. His face was granite, his weapon still in hand. We have the evidence. We have witnesses. He's finished in this city. Finished in this life. The sound of sirens grew louder, multiple vehicles approaching. The police had apparently gotten tired of waiting at the gate. You need to let them in, Victor said. Let them see the crime scene, collect evidence. It'll support your version of events. That Brennan staged a coup, and you defended yourself. Antonio looked at Victor for a long moment, then at his daughter standing beside the man who should have been his enemy. You protected my children, he said finally. I protected my city. Your children just happened to be part of that equation. Don't play modest. You could have used them as leverage, turned them into weapons against me. Instead, you kept them safe, fed them, helped them. Antonio's voice was rough with emotion he was barely containing. Why? Because your daughter showed kindness to my mother when she didn't have to. Because your sons are brave and smart and deserved a chance to save their father. Because the right thing and the strategic thing happened to align. Victor met Antonio's gaze steadily. And because I'm tired of pointless wars. Tired of blood feuds that serve no one. If there's a chance to build something better, I'll take it. Alessandra held her breath, watching her father process this. Antonio Vitale was old school, raised on codes and vendettas and clear lines between friend and enemy. Accepting help from Moretti would go against every instinct. But he was also a father, and his children stood before him, alive and whole, because of that Moretti's intervention. Antonio extended his hand. Thank you for keeping them safe, for bringing them home. Victor shook it, the gesture carrying more weight than any treaty. You're welcome. The police entered minutes later, along with what seemed like half of the local FBI field office. The estate became a crime scene. Antonio gave his statement with Marco and Maria corroborating, and somewhere in the chaos of law enforcement and evidence collection, Alessandra found herself sitting on the terrace steps with her brothers, watching the sun begin to rise over Long Island. We did it, Julian said softly. We actually did it. We survived, Mickey corrected. But Brennan's still out there, still dangerous. He's a fugitive now, powerless. He can't touch us anymore. Alessandra leaned her head on Mickey's shoulder, exhaustion catching up to her. And we have proof of everything. He's done. Inside, through the French doors, she could see her father talking with Victor. Two powerful men who'd spent years as adversaries, now navigating the strange waters of unwilling alliance. It wouldn't be smooth. There would be complications, territory disputes, old grudges bubbling up. But for now they were talking, and that was something. Sophia appeared on the terrace, looking as tired as Alessandra felt. Victor says we should leave soon, before too many questions get asked about why Moretti forces were on Vitale property. Tell him 5 more minutes, Alessandra said. Sophia nodded and disappeared back inside. The sun climbed higher, burning away the night's darkness. Alessandra thought about Clara Whitmore, the identity she'd worn like armor for 3 years. That girl was gone now, dissolved in gunfire and truth. But maybe that was okay. Maybe she'd served her purpose, keeping Alessandra alive long enough to find her way back to herself. Her father emerged onto the terrace, moving slowly like a man who'd aged years in a single night. He stood there, looking at his 3 children, his expression unreadable. Then he sank down beside them on the steps and pulled them all into an embrace so tight it hurt. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking, "for not protecting you better, for not seeing what was happening, for losing you." This last was directed at Alessandra. "I should have listened when you said you didn't want the marriage. Should have found another way. Instead, I drove you away and lost 3 years with you." "I'm here now," Alessandra whispered. "We all are. That's what matters." They sat like that as the sun rose fully, a family fractured and reunited, broken and healing. Inside, law enforcement continued their work. Somewhere in the city, Brennan was running. And in the future, there would be complications and conflicts and all the messy reality of trying to build peace from the ashes of war. But for this moment, on these steps, they were simply a father and his children who'd found their way back to each other through darkness and danger, and the kind of love that survives anything, even death, even betrayal, even 3 years of silence and grief and loss. Victor appeared in the doorway. "We really need to go. The feds are starting to ask pointed questions." Alessandra stood, helping her father up. "Will I see you again?" she asked Victor. "Count on it. We have a lot to figure out. Territory agreements, alliance terms, how to handle the Castellano situation." His smile was slight but genuine. "Plus, I think my mother would like to have coffee with the woman who brightened her evening so much. I'd like that too." Their eyes held for a moment longer than necessary, acknowledgement of everything unsaid passing between them. Then Victor nodded to Antonio, gathered his team, and disappeared into the morning light. Alessandra watched him go, feeling the weight of exhaustion and relief and something that might have been hope settling into her bones. "So," Mickey said, appearing at her elbow, "you and Victor Moretti? Don't start. I'm just saying, the way he looks at you." "Mickey, and the way you look at him." Alessandra elbowed him, and he laughed, the sound bright and young and so precious after all the violence. Julian joined in, and even their father managed a slight smile, and for a moment they were just a family teasing and laughing on a beautiful morning. Inside, the investigators continued their work, building the case that would ensure Brennan could never touch them again. The evidence was solid, the witnesses credible, the crime scene damning. But Thomas Brennan was still out there, somewhere in the city's shadows, plotting his revenge or his escape. That threat would have to be dealt with, soon. For now, though, they had this moment of peace, this reunion, this chance to rebuild what had been broken. And sometimes, Alessandra thought, that had to be enough. The peace lasted exactly 48 hours. Alessandra was in her childhood bedroom, unchanged since she'd left, like a museum to the girl she'd been, when Mickey burst through the door without knocking. "He took Julian!" The words didn't make sense at first. Alessandra looked up from the book she'd been pretending to read, her mind struggling to process. "What?" "Brennan. He took Julian 20 minutes ago, outside the coffee shop on Madison. 2 men grabbed him, threw him in a van. Security footage caught it all." Mickey's face was white, his hands shaking. "Dad's mobilizing everyone, but Brennan sent a message. He wants to trade." Ice flooded Alessandra's vein. "Trade for what?" "For you. He wants you at the old Castellano warehouse in Red Hook, alone, by midnight tonight, or Julian dies." The room tilted. Alessandra gripped the edge of the bed, forcing herself to breathe. Julian, sweet, gentle Julian, who'd never wanted this life, who dreamed of college and normalcy and escape. Julian, who was barely 16 and terrified of violence despite being raised in it. "Dad said no," Mickey continued, his voice cracking. "He said we don't negotiate with terrorists, that we'll find Julian another way. But Alessandra, Brennan's got nothing to lose now. He's cornered, and cornered animals do terrible things." Alessandra was already moving, pulling on boots, grabbing her phone. "Where's Dad now?" "In the study with Marco and Uncle Dominic, planning an assault on the warehouse. But Brennan will see them coming. He'll kill Julian the moment he spots our people." Mickey caught her arm. "You can't be thinking." "I'm going. Of course I'm going." "That's exactly what he wants. You show up alone, he kills you both. Uses your deaths to send a message, to hurt Dad, to go out in a blaze of revenge." "Then I won't go alone." Alessandra pulled out her phone and dialed Victor's number. He answered on the second ring. I was expecting this call, he said without preamble. I already heard. My contact in the police department flagged the kidnapping report. I need your help, one more time. You have it. But Alessandra, this is different from before. Brennan's desperate now. Desperate men are unpredictable. I know, but he has my brother. And I won't let Julian die because I chose survival over family. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. I'm going to that warehouse. The only question is whether I go smart or I go stupid. Victor was quiet for a moment. Give me 2 hours. I'll put together a plan, a real one, not a suicide mission disguised as rescue. I don't have 2 hours. Midnight is the deadline. It's 9 a.m. You have 15 hours. Trust me, please. Let me do this right. Alessandra closed her eyes, warring with every instinct, screaming at her to act now, move now, save her brother now. But Victor had kept them alive this far, had navigated impossible situations with strategy and precision. 2 hours, she agreed. But then we move, ready or not. She ended the call and found Mickey watching her with an expression caught between admiration and terror. You're really doing this? He's our brother. What choice do I have? The smart choice. The safe choice. Letting Dad handle it. Dad's going to send 20 men with guns to storm a building where our brother is being held hostage by a desperate, brilliant man who has nothing left to lose. You think that ends well? Mickey's silence was answer enough. Downstairs, the estate was controlled chaos. Antonio's people were everywhere, gathering weapons, reviewing blueprints of the Red Hook warehouse, coordinating with informants throughout the city, trying to track Brennan's movements. Alessandra found her father in his study, looking older than she'd ever seen him, bent over maps with Marco and Dominic. Alessandra! Antonio's voice was rough. Your brother told you. He did, and I'm going to that warehouse. Absolutely not. I won't lose both of you. You won't lose either of us if we do this smart. Dad, Brennan wants me because I'm visible proof of his failure. Proof that he didn't destroy this family like he planned. But he also wants you to storm that warehouse. Wants you to react with overwhelming force so he can kill Julian in the crossfire and blame you for it. Antonio's jaw worked. So what do you suggest? That we just give you to him? I suggest we let him think he's getting what he wants while we actually maintain control of the situation. Alessandra moved to the map, pointing to the warehouse. Victor's putting together a plan. His people, our people, working together. I go to the warehouse seemingly alone, but I'm covered from every angle. The moment Julian's safe, we take Brennan down. Victor Moretti. Dominic's voice was skeptical. You're trusting him with your life? With Julian's life? I'm trusting him with all our lives, and he's earned that trust. Alessandra met her uncle's eyes. He could have used us against Dad, could have let Brennan's coup succeed and picked up the pieces. Instead, he helped us, protected us, gave us the resources to fight back. At some point, we have to decide if he's an ally or an enemy. I've already decided. Marco, pale but present despite his injuries, nodded slowly. The kid's right. We need Moretti's people for this. They're trained for tactical situations, they're not emotionally compromised, and they have resources we don't. Surveillance equipment, communication systems that can't be easily jammed, extraction capabilities. Antonio looked at each of them, then at the map, then at his daughter, who'd come back from the dead and was now volunteering to walk into death again. If we do this, he said finally, we do it my way. My people are part of the plan. I want eyes on that warehouse, I want backup in position, and I want the ability to pull you out the second things go wrong. Agreed. Victor's coming here in 2 hours. We plan together, all of us. Alessandra's voice softened. Dad, I know this is hard, but Julian's counting on us, and we can't save him if we're fighting each other. The hours that followed were intense and focused. Victor arrived with Sophia and 3 tactical specialists, and what started as tense negotiation gradually became genuine collaboration. Maps were spread across the dining table, satellite imagery pulled up on laptops, every angle of the warehouse analyzed and debated. 3 entry points, Sophia explained, using a laser pointer. Main loading dock here, side door here, roof access here. Brennan will be watching all of them, so we need to assume he has people positioned to see anyone approaching. Which is why Alessandra goes in the front, Victor added. visible, alone, exactly as requested. But she's wearing a wire, a tracking device, and a vest under her clothing. We hear everything. We know where she is, and she has some protection. Not enough protection if Brennan puts a bullet in her head, Antonio said grimly, which is why we have snipers here, here, and here. Victor pointed to 3 surrounding buildings. The moment we have visual confirmation that Julian's alive and in the warehouse, the moment Brennan shows himself, we have him in our sights. If he makes any move to hurt either of them, we take the shot. Marco leaned forward, studying the positions. What about Brennan's people? He won't be alone. Thermal imaging suggests 4 to 6 heat signatures in the warehouse. Could be Brennan, and his remaining loyalists could include Julian. We won't know for sure until Alessandra's inside. Sophia pulled up thermal footage. But our teams will be positioned to neutralize any resistance. Fast, efficient, minimal risk to the hostage. Minimal is still a risk, Dominic pointed out. Everything's a risk, Alessandra said. But this is the best option we have. I go in, I keep Brennan talking. I stall until you can confirm Julian's location and condition. Then we move. They refined the plan for another hour, working through contingencies and backup strategies. Mickey insisted on being part of the assault team, despite Antonio's protests. Maria coordinated communications equipment. Even the household staff contributed, providing intelligence on the warehouse from when the Vitales had owned it years ago. Hidden exits, structural weaknesses, sight lines. By early evening, they were as ready as they could be. Alessandra stood in her bedroom, staring at her reflection as Sophia helped her into the lightweight body armor that would hide under her clothing. You don't have to do this, Sophia said quietly. Victor would understand. Your father would understand. But I wouldn't. Julian wouldn't. Alessandra met Sophia's eyes in the mirror. How do you do it? Walk into danger knowing you might not walk out? I focus on what I can control. My training, my preparation, my team. The rest is chaos, and chaos doesn't respect fear. Sophia adjusted the vest, checking the fit. But I also accept that some things are worth dying for. And for me, that's protecting people who can't protect themselves. Sounds like for you, it's family. A family, Alessandra agreed. Even when they're difficult, even when loving them costs everything. Sophia smiled slightly. Victor feels the same way about his mother. Why he noticed you in the first place. Takes one to know one. Is that your way of saying I should give him a chance when this is over? I'm saying life's short and getting shorter every time you walk into a warehouse full of armed men. If you survive tonight, maybe stop overthinking and see where it goes. Sophia finished with the vest and stepped back. There. You're as protected as we can make you. Alessandra turned, studying her reflection. She looked like herself again. Amber eyes visible, dark hair pulled back simply, no more hiding. The girl who'd served invisible tables at Luminaire was gone. This was Alessandra Vitale, daughter of Antonio, sister to Mickey and Julian, survivor of betrayal and exile and everything Brennan had thrown at them. This was who she'd always been underneath the disguises, and maybe it was time to stop apologizing for it. Downstairs, the team was gathering. Victor's people in tactical gear, Antonio's most trusted soldiers checking weapons, everyone moving with the focused intensity of professionals preparing for battle. Alessandra descended the stairs to find her father waiting at the bottom. I want to say don't go, he said. Want to lock you in your room and handle this myself, but that's not who you are anymore. Maybe it never was. I'm still your daughter. That hasn't changed. No, but you're also your own woman. Brave and smart and willing to risk everything for the people you love. Antonio's voice cracked slightly. Your mother would be proud. I'm proud, even if I'm terrified. I'm terrified too, but Julian needs me, and I won't let him down. Antonio pulled her into an embrace, holding tight like he could protect her through sheer force of will. You come back. Both of you. That's an order. Yes, sir. Victor approached as Antonio released her, his expression professionally neutral, but his eyes warm with concern. Ready? As I'll ever be. They moved out in a convoy, 3 vehicles heading toward Red Hook, toward the warehouse where Brennan waited with her brother and his rage and his desperate need for revenge. Alessandra rode with Victor and Sophia, the silence in the car heavy with anticipation. When you get inside, Victor said, your priority is gathering information. Where's Julian? What's his condition? How many people does Brennan have? Don't engage, don't provoke. Just buy us time to position our people. And if Brennan wants immediate action, wants to hurt Julian to prove he's serious, then you use what you know about him. He's former prosecutor, which means he's a talker. He builds cases, makes arguments. Get him talking about his grievances, his plans, his brilliance. Feed his ego. Men like him love to explain how smart they are. The warehouse district appeared in the windows. Industrial decay and abandoned buildings, perfect for the kind of confrontation that needed to happen away from witnesses. Victor's convoy parked 6 blocks away, close enough to respond but far enough to avoid detection. Comms check, Sophia said, speaking into her radio. Reports came back from teams positioned around the warehouse. Snipers in place. Ground units ready. Technical support monitoring all frequencies. Alessandra touched the small earpiece hidden in her ear, the microphone disguised as a pendant around her neck. Testing. We hear you, Victor confirmed. Remember, you're not alone in there. We're with you every second. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Victor gripped her hand briefly, a gesture of solidarity and something more. Then she was out of the vehicle, walking alone through the empty streets toward the warehouse where her brother waited. The building loomed ahead, 4 stories of brick and broken windows. The main loading dock door was open, light spilling out into the darkness. Alessandra approached slowly, hands visible, following Brennan's instructions exactly. I'm here, she called out. Alone, as requested. Let me see my brother. Silence. Then Brennan's voice echoing from inside. Come in, Alessandra. Slowly. Hands where I can see them. She entered the warehouse, eyes adjusting to the harsh work lights that had been set up inside. The space was vast and mostly empty, concrete floor and metal support beams creating shadows and hiding places. And in the center, tied to a chair with blood on his face and terror in his eyes, was Julian. Jules, Alessandra breathed. Alessandra, don't! Julian's words cut off as someone behind him, one of Brennan's men, cuffed him hard across the back of the head. That's enough. Brennan emerged from the shadows, looking worse than Alessandra had ever seen him. Unshaven, eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion and something that might have been madness. His expensive suit was rumpled, his usually perfect composure shattered. Welcome, Alessandra. Or should I say, welcome back from the dead. That's quite a trick you pulled. Had everyone convinced for 3 years. Let Julian go. You have me. That's what you wanted. What I wanted was to build an empire. What I wanted was respect, recognition, power that was mine, instead of borrowed from men too stupid to use it properly. Brennan moved closer, a gun hanging loosely in his hand. But you and your brothers couldn't leave well enough alone. Had to dig, had to investigate, had to ruin everything I built. You ruined it yourself when you decided betrayal was easier than loyalty. Alessandra kept her voice calm, remembering Victor's advice. Keep him talking. You could have been Dad's consigliere for decades, could have had real power, real influence. Why throw it away? Because being second is never enough, not when you're smarter, better, more deserving than the man above you. Brennan's voice rose, emotion bleeding through his control. I prosecuted men like your father for 20 years. Put them in prison, destroyed their operations, and then I realized, why fight them when I could become them? But better, cleaner, without all the outdated honor codes and family loyalty nonsense that makes them weak. Is that what you think? That loving your family makes you weak? It makes you exploitable. Look at you, walking into an obvious trap because I took your brother. Look at your father, compromising with the Morettis because he loves you. Love is a weapon, and I know how to use it. Through her earpiece, Alessandra heard Victor's voice, barely a whisper. Julian's in the center of the room, 4 men visible, Brennan armed. We need him to move left, away from Julian. Keep him talking. Alessandra took a step forward, drawing Brennan's attention. You're right, I did walk into a trap, but not because I'm weak, because Julian's worth it, because some things matter more than survival. Noble stupid, but noble. Brennan gestured with his gun. You know what happens now, don't you? I kill you both. Send your bodies back to Antonio as a message. Then I disappear. I have resources overseas, new identities prepared. And your father lives the rest of his life knowing his children died because he couldn't protect them. Except you're forgetting something. What's that? I didn't come alone. Brennan's eyes widened. You? The windows exploded inward as Victor's team breached the warehouse from 3 sides simultaneously. Flash grenades detonated, filling the space with blinding light and deafening sound. Alessandra dove toward Julian as gunfire erupted, Brennan's men returning fire at the assault teams. It was chaos, strobing light, the crack of weapons, shouted orders over radio. Alessandra reached Julian and worked frantically at his restraints while bullets pinged off concrete around them. "I've got you," she gasped. "I've got you." The rope came free, and Julian stumbled to his feet, Alessandra supporting him as they ran for cover behind a support beam. Around them, Victor's people moved with lethal efficiency, taking down Brennan's men with precise shots. Antonio's soldiers poured through the loading dock, adding their firepower to the assault. And Brennan was running, heading for a back exit that Marco's old intelligence had warned them about. "He's heading for the south exit," Alessandra said into her microphone. "Don't let him escape." But Brennan was fast, desperate, running with the energy of a man who knew capture meant life imprisonment. He burst through the back door into an alley, and Alessandra made a split-second decision. She ran after him. "Alessandra, no!" Victor's voice crackled in her ear. "Stay with Julian." But she was already through the door, the cold night air hitting her face as she sprinted after Brennan's fleeing form. He was heading for a car parked 2 blocks away, his escape vehicle. If he reached it, he'd disappear into the city, and they might never find him again. Alessandra pushed herself harder, her lungs burning, legs pumping. Brennan was older but desperate, and desperation added speed. He reached the car, fumbling with keys, and she was still half a block away. Then a black SUV screeched around the corner, cutting off Brennan's escape. Victor emerged from the passenger side, weapon raised. "It's over, Thomas." Brennan spun, his gun coming up. For a frozen moment, they stood there. Brennan with his weapon pointed at Victor, Victor with his trained on Brennan, Alessandra skidding to a stop between them. "Don't," she said. "Brennan, don't do this. You're caught. It's finished. Dying here accomplishes nothing. Dying free is better than living in a cage." Brennan's hand was shaking, but his aim was steady enough. "You should understand that, Alessandra. You, who ran rather than accept your father's chains. I ran to find freedom. You're running from consequences. That's not the same thing. Isn't it? We both made choices that our world couldn't forgive. We both tried to escape. The only difference is you succeeded. The difference is I didn't murder anyone to do it." Alessandra took a careful step forward. "Please, put down the gun. Face what you've done. You're smart enough to make a deal, turn evidence on the Castellanos, maybe get a reduced sentence." "Reduced to what? 20 years instead of life? I'm 60 years old, Alessandra. 20 years is life." Brennan's laugh was bitter. "No. I'd rather die on my terms than rot in prison, remembering what I almost built." "Thomas," Victor started. Brennan's gun shifted toward Alessandra. Victor fired. The shot was precise, professional. Brennan dropped, his weapon clattering to the pavement. He lay there bleeding, eyes wide with shock and pain, and something that might have been relief. Alessandra knelt beside him as Victor called for medical assistance. Blood pooled on the concrete, too much blood. The shot had been meant to disable, but Brennan was older, frailer than he seemed. His breathing was labored, his face pale. "You were right," he whispered. "Love does make you weak. I saw it in you and your father and everyone I manipulated, but I was wrong about one thing." "What's that?" "Being weak isn't always the same as losing." His eyes were dimming, focusing on something beyond Alessandra's shoulder. "You won. The weak one won. How ironic." His breathing stopped. His eyes went vacant. Thomas Brennan, brilliant and broken and desperate for power he could never quite grasp, was gone. Alessandra stood slowly, her hands shaking. Victor approached, holstering his weapon. "I'm sorry. I aimed for his shoulder, but he moved and I saw." Alessandra's voice was hollow. "You saved my life. He was going to shoot me. Still, taking a life is never easy." Even when it's necessary? Especially then. Sirens approached. Ambulance, police, the machinery of law and investigation grinding into motion. Antonio's car screeched to a halt at the end of the alley, and her father emerged, followed by Mickey supporting a limping Julian. Alessandra! Antonio reached her in seconds, pulling her into an embrace. When you ran after him, I thought, I know, I'm sorry, I just couldn't let him escape. Julian wrapped his arms around both of them, shaking with relief and reaction. You came for me. You both came. Always, Alessandra said fiercely. You're my brother. I'll always come for you. Mickey joined the embrace, and they stood there in the alley as emergency vehicles arrived, as police secured the scene, as Brennan's body was photographed and documented and eventually taken away. A family reunited, intact despite everything that had tried to tear them apart. Later, after statements were given and evidence logged and lawyers consulted, they returned to the estate as dawn painted the sky in shades of rose and gold. Alessandra found herself in the kitchen, making coffee with hands that had finally stopped shaking. Victor appeared in the doorway, looking exhausted but alive. Your father's people are securing the house. My team's packing up. We'll be out of your way soon. You're not in the way. Alessandra. He moved closer, his voice soft. We need to talk about what happens next. Between our families. Between us. I know, but maybe not right now. Right now I just want to drink terrible coffee and pretend the world is normal for a few hours. Is it terrible? Victor accepted the mug she offered, taking a sip. Oh, wow, that's aggressively bad. Alessandra laughed, the sound surprising her. After everything, the violence, the fear, the death, she could still laugh. I never claimed to be domestic. Good thing you have other skills. They stood in comfortable silence, drinking awful coffee as the house came alive around them. Staff emerging to assess damage and begin repairs. Antonio's people planning security upgrades and protocol changes. Mickey and Julian asleep on the living room couch, exhausted and safe. What will you do now? Victor asked. Go back to hiding? Stay here? I don't know. The hiding served its purpose, but I'm not sure I can put the Clara Whitmore mask back on. She feels like someone else's life now. Alessandra set down her mug. Maybe it's time to figure out who Alessandra Vitale actually is when she's not running or fighting or surviving. I'd like to be around for that discovery, if you'll let me. As what? An ally? A friend? Something more? Victor's smile was genuine and warm. How about we start with ally and see where it goes? No pressure, no expectations. Just two people who've been through fire together, trying to build something better on the other side. I'd like that. He set down his own mug and took her hand, the gesture simple but weighted with meaning. Your father wants to meet next week, discuss formal arrangements between our families, territory agreements, mutual defense pacts, legitimate business ventures. The beginning of peace. Or at least the end of pointless conflict. Victor's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. It won't be smooth. There will be resistance from the old guard, people who've spent decades treating each other as enemies. But it's possible, if we want it badly enough. Do you want it? I want a future where my mother doesn't worry every time I leave the house, where kids like your brothers don't have to grow up expecting violence, where smart people build things instead of destroying them. His eyes met hers. And yes, I want you in that future, in whatever capacity you're comfortable with. Before Alessandra could respond, Mickey appeared in the doorway, looking embarrassed. Sorry to interrupt. Dad wants everyone in the study, says it's important. They gathered in Antonio's study, the family and Victor as honorary member, and Antonio stood behind his desk looking somehow both exhausted and energized. I've made a decision, he announced. Several decisions, actually. First, we're restructuring the organization, moving away from the old business models, transitioning to more legitimate operations. It'll take years, but it's happening. Dominic started to protest, but Antonio raised a hand. This isn't up for debate. Brennan's betrayal showed me that the old ways are crumbling. We adapt or we die. So we adapt. Second, Antonio continued, I'm establishing a foundation, the Maria Vitale Foundation, named for your mother. He looked at his children. It'll provide resources for families affected by violence, counseling, education, job training, a way to give back, to help people escape this life if they want to. Alessandra felt tears prick her eyes. Her mother would have loved that, would have been so proud. Third, I'm formalizing our alliance with the Morettis. Victor, your people saved my family. That's a debt I can never fully repay, but I can ensure we're partners moving forward. Real partners, not just convenient allies. Well, Victor inclined his head in acknowledgement. I'm honored, and I accept. And finally, Antonio's eyes found Alessandra. I'm giving you a choice. You can stay here, take a position in the organization, help guide us through the transition, or you can go, live your own life, with my blessing and my support. No obligations, no debts, just freedom to be whoever you want to be. The room was silent. Alessandra felt the weight of the choice, the magnitude of it. Stay and help build something better from the ashes of what had been, or go and finally claim the independence she'd run toward 3 years ago. Can I think about it? She asked. Take all the time you need. The weeks that followed were strange and wonderful and complicated. Alessandra stayed at the estate while she figured out her next steps, watching her family adapt to the new reality. Mickey threw himself into learning the legitimate business operations, his sharp mind perfectly suited for strategy and planning. Julian started talking about college again, about studying psychology and helping people. Antonio aged into the role of elder statesman, guiding the transition with surprising grace. And Victor was there. Not constantly, not overwhelming her space, but present. They had coffee weekly, discussing the alliance and the future, and gradually, carefully, everything else. They attended his mother's birthday party together, a small gathering where Alessandra signed long conversations with the woman whose presence had started everything. They walked through Millennium Park, where they'd first made their deal, marveling at how much had changed since that cold November day. I think I've decided, Alessandra told him one evening as they stood at those same windows in his safe house, looking out at Chicago's lights. About? What to do next? Who to be? Victor waited, patient as always. I'm staying, but not in the organization. I'm going to run the foundation, use my experience, my connections, my understanding of this life to actually help people escape it if they want to, or navigate it better if they can't. That's perfect. That's so perfectly you. Is it? I'm not sure I know what me is yet. Then we'll figure it out together. No pressure, no timeline, just together. Alessandra turned to face him, seeing in his eyes the future they could build. Not perfect, not without challenges, but real, honest, built on choice instead of obligation. Together, she agreed. I think I like the sound of that. He kissed her then, soft and careful and full of promise. And outside the windows, Chicago glittered in the darkness like 1,000 possibilities waiting to be born. 6 months later, Alessandra stood at a podium in front of 200 people, donors, community leaders, families who'd been touched by violence and were looking for a way forward. The Maria Vitale Foundation's first major fundraising gala, held in a hotel ballroom that sparkled with crystal and hope. My mother believed in second chances, she said into the microphone, her voice steady. She believed that people were more than their worst moments, more than the circumstances they were born into. She believed in the power of kindness to change lives. In the front row, her father sat with tears in his eyes. Beside him, Mickey and Julian looked proud and grown, and so much more hopeful than they'd been a year ago. Uncle Dominic and Aunt Maria beamed, and at a table near the back, Victor sat with his mother, both of them watching Alessandra with expressions of warm encouragement. 3 years ago, I ran away from my life because I thought freedom meant escape. But I've learned that real freedom is choice. The choice to help instead of harm, to build instead of destroy, to love instead of fear. Alessandra's hands moved in sign language as she spoke, translating for Victor's mother and others in the audience. This foundation represents that choice. We can't erase the past, can't undo the violence or the loss, but we can choose what we build from here. We can choose hope. The applause was thunderous. Donations poured in, from legitimate businesses and reformed criminals, from society matrons and former prosecutors, from people across the city who wanted to believe change was possible. After the speeches and the dinner and the dancing, Alessandra found herself on the balcony with Victor, looking out at the city that had almost killed them both and had instead given them a chance at something better. "Your mother would be proud," Victor said quietly. "I hope so. I'm trying to honor her memory by being someone she'd recognize, someone kind, someone who sees people. You've always been that person, even when you were trying to be invisible." Victor's hand found hers. "That's what I saw in you that first night. Not just someone hiding, someone who couldn't help but be generous even when generosity was dangerous. And look where it got me. Death threats, gunfights, family drama. Also new family connections, a purpose, and..." He paused. "And me, if you'll have me." Alessandra turned to face him fully. "Are you asking what I think you're asking? I'm asking if you'd consider making this permanent. Not marriage. I know better than to rush you. But a real relationship, a real partnership, building this future together instead of just talking about it." "Yes," Alessandra said without hesitation. "Yes to all of it. The relationship, the partnership, the future, even, eventually, the marriage, if that's where we end up." Victor's smile was radiant, even with all the complications, the family politics, the difficult histories, the fact that 6 months ago we were supposed to be enemies. Especially because of all that, we've already survived the worst. Everything else is just details. He kissed her there on the balcony, and through the windows, Alessandra could see her family watching and smiling. Mickey gave her a thumbs up. Julian looked teary and happy, and her father nodded once, approval and acceptance and love written in the gesture. The party continued late into the night, and Alessandra moved through it with Victor at her side, greeting donors and telling stories and signing conversations with people who'd been invisible too long. She was Alessandra Vitale again, not hiding, not running, not pretending to be someone else. Just herself, with all the complicated history and messy emotions and fierce love that entailed. As the last guest departed and the staff began cleaning up, Alessandra found her brothers helping stack chairs despite their expensive suits. "You don't have to do that," she said. "We know," Mickey replied. "But Mom always said family helps family, even with the small stuff." "Especially with the small stuff," Julian added. They worked together in comfortable silence, 3 siblings who'd been scattered and reunited, broken and healed. Outside, the city continued its endless motion, people living and loving and struggling and surviving. Some of them would find the foundation, would get help, would get their second chance at a better life. And some of them would stay in the darkness, trapped by circumstances or choices, or the simple bad luck of being born into violence. Alessandra couldn't save everyone, but she could try. She could use her experience, her resources, her hard-won understanding of both worlds to build bridges between them. "Ready to go home?" Victor asked, appearing with their coats. "Yeah, I think I am." They drove through Chicago's late-night streets, past the restaurant where she'd worked as Clara, past Millennium Park, where they'd made their first alliance, past the warehouse where everything had almost ended. The city that had been her hiding place had become her home, not because she was running anymore, but because she'd chosen it. At the estate, lights were still on in her father's study. Antonio never slept well anymore, plagued by might-have-beens and close calls. But he was trying, every day, to be better, to build better. And that was all any of them could do. Alessandra kissed Victor goodnight at the door, a promise of tomorrow and the day after, and all the days that followed. Then she went inside, kicked off her heels, and climbed the stairs to her childhood bedroom that was slowly becoming her adult sanctuary. On her nightstand was a photo, recently taken, her brothers and her father and herself, all smiling, alive, together. Beside it was her mother's necklace, the one she'd worn the day she ran away, the one that had been returned to her after Brennan's death, among her father's keepsakes. Alessandra picked up the necklace, feeling its weight, its history. Then she put it on, the metal cool against her skin. "I did it, Mom," she whispered to the empty room. "I found my way home, and I'm going to make you proud. I'm going to help people the way you always wanted to. I'm going to choose love over fear, kindness over cruelty, hope over despair." Through the window, the first hints of dawn were lightening the sky. A new day, a new beginning, the kind of fresh start that came not from running away, but from standing firm and fighting for what mattered. Alessandra Vitale, daughter, sister, survivor, builder of bridges, fell asleep as the sun rose, dreaming of foundations and futures and the infinite possibilities that came from choosing to be seen.